They called her worthless. He called her his. Tonight, you'll witness a woman society threw away become the one they couldn't ignore. Stay until the end to see how one act of kindness in a glass conservatory changed everything. And if this story grabs you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Now, let's begin. The champagne flute shattered against marble with a sound like breaking bones. Clara Whitmore didn't flinch. She'd learned long ago not to react when her cousin Beatrice got theatrical. The blonde 17-year-old stood in the center of the Ashford ballroom, one hand pressed to her chest in mock horror, the other pointing directly at Clara. "Oh, my stars, I'm so sorry, cousin. I didn't see you there." Beatrice's voice carried across the crowd, sweet as poisoned honey. "You blend right into the wallpaper, don't you?" Laughter rippled through the gathered elite like wind through dead leaves. Clara stood frozen beside the refreshment table, her plain gray dress suddenly feeling like lead weights. 32 years old, unmarried, unwanted. The family embarrassment on display once again. "Beatrice, darling, leave the poor thing alone." That was Aunt Marjorie, Beatrice's mother, Clara's father's sister. The woman swept forward in emerald silk, all false sympathy and genuine contempt. "Clara can't help what she is. Some women are born to shine, and others—" She paused, letting her gaze drift over Clara's unremarkable features, her severe brown hair, her too-thin frame. "Others are born to watch." Clara's fingernails dug into her palms. She should be used to this. She was used to this. Every gathering, every dinner, every cursed social event where her family paraded her out like proof of their charity. "Look how kind we are, keeping the spinster around. Look how generous, giving her a home when no man would have her." "I apologize for the disruption," Clara said quietly, setting down her own untouched glass. Her voice came out steady, at least. Years of practice hiding the wounds. "I'll step outside." "Probably for the best," her brother Thomas muttered from somewhere behind her, "before you scare off the real guests." More laughter. Always more laughter. Clara turned and walked. Not quickly, that would show them they'd drawn blood, but steadily, chin up, shoulders straight, even as her throat burned and her eyes stung. She navigated through clusters of London's finest, people who'd known her since childhood and now looked through her like she was made of glass. The ballroom doors loomed ahead. Freedom. Escape. Just a few more steps. "Miss Whitmore." The voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk, deep, unfamiliar. Clara's step faltered, but she didn't turn. Couldn't be meant for her. No one addressed her directly at these things unless it was to mock. "Miss Clara Whitmore." This time the voice was closer, right behind her, and the entire ballroom seemed to hush. Clara stopped, turned. The man standing 3 feet away was built like he'd been carved from the frontier itself. Broad shoulders straining against his formal coat, hands that looked more comfortable around reins than champagne glasses, face weathered in a way that spoke of sun and wind and open sky. His dark hair was longer than fashion dictated, his jaw sharp, his eyes the color of storm clouds. And he was looking at her, not through her, not past her, directly at her with an intensity that made her heart stutter. "I'm sorry," Clara managed. "Do I know you?" "Adrian Blackwood." He didn't bow, didn't follow any of the elaborate social rituals the ton demanded, just stood there, solid and real, while whispers exploded around them. "Duke of Northridge, and no, we haven't met, but I've been watching you all evening." The room spun. Adrian Blackwood, the frontier duke, the man who'd inherited a title at 15 and promptly vanished into the wilderness for a decade, building an empire from nothing before returning to claim his seat in Parliament. Society didn't know what to make of him, too rough, too independent, too wealthy and powerful to ignore. And he'd been watching her? Clara's mind went blank. This had to be some new form of humiliation, some joke Beatrice or Thomas had orchestrated. "I'm afraid I don't understand, Your Grace." "You left your seat 40 minutes ago." His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. "Moved to the refreshment table when the musicians started that waltz. You've been standing in the same spot since, watching everything, saying nothing. And when that girl, your cousin, decided to perform her little scene, you didn't defend yourself, didn't cry, didn't make a scene, you just absorbed it. Clara felt her face heat. He had been watching, closely. I fail to see what business that is of yours. None at all. Something that might have been a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Which is why I'm making it my business. Walk with me. It wasn't a question. He offered his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she wasn't the family embarrassment, like half the ballroom wasn't staring in absolute shock. Clara should refuse, should protect what was left of her dignity, should... All right. The word escaped before she could stop it. His arm was solid beneath her gloved hand. He led her toward the ballroom doors, and the crowd parted like water, too stunned to do anything but gawk. Behind them, Aunt Marjorie's voice rose sharp. Your Grace, surely you don't mean to... I mean to take some air, madam. Adrian didn't slow, didn't even glance back. With Miss Whitmore, excuse us. They pushed through the doors into the corridor beyond. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. This isn't funny. Good. I'm not laughing. Then what are you doing? Do you have any idea what this looks like? What they'll say? I know exactly what they'll say. Adrian guided her down the hallway, past servants who suddenly found reasons to examine the wallpaper. That I'm mad. That you've somehow bewitched me. That it's a scandal and an outrage and probably the end of civilized society as we know it. Then why? Because I don't give a damn what they say. He stopped, turned to face her directly. Up close, he was even more imposing, all controlled strength and absolute certainty. And because you looked like you were about to shatter back there, and something in me couldn't watch it happen. Clara's throat tightened. You don't know me. No, but I know them. Spent enough time in their world to recognize vultures when I see them. His gaze was steady, unflinching. How long have they been treating you like that? All my life. The words came out before she could stop them. Honest. Broken. Or at least since I turned 25 and it became clear no one was going to marry me. I'm the failure. The cautionary tale. The reason mothers tell their daughters to smile prettier and try harder. Because you're not married. Because I'm not marriageable. There's a difference. Adrian studied her face like he was reading a map. Who told you that? Everyone. Clara pulled her hand from his arm, suddenly aware of how pathetic this all was. A duke didn't rescue spinsters, didn't care about their small, crushing humiliations. This had to be leading somewhere cruel. My family, society, the 10 men who turned down offers for my hand before my father stopped trying. I'm 32, Your Grace. I'm plain, I'm poor, I'm standing in front of me making excuses for other people's blindness. The words hit like a slap. Clara's breath caught. You want to know what I saw tonight? Adrian stepped closer, and she could smell leather and pine, nothing like the cloying perfumes inside. I saw a woman who carries herself with more grace than any of those preening peacocks in there. I saw intelligence in your eyes, strength in the way you didn't break when they tried to make you. And I saw someone who deserves better than being treated like furniture in her own family. You don't know what you're talking about. But her voice shook. Maybe not. But I know what I want. He held her gaze. And right now, I want to walk you through that door at the end of this hall, into what I'm guessing is a conservatory, and talk to you like you're a person worth talking to. No games, no cruelty, just conversation. Clara should run, should go back to the ballroom and disappear into the wallpaper where she belonged. This man was dangerous, not to her body, but to the careful walls she'd built around her heart. But when was the last time anyone had looked at her like she mattered? One conversation, she heard herself say. Then you go back to your life, and I go back to mine. Deal. Adrian offered his arm again. Lead the way, Miss Whitmore. The conservatory was exactly where Clara had been heading before Adrian intercepted her. A glass-walled sanctuary at the back of the Ashford estate, filled with exotic plants and blessed quiet. Moonlight poured through the transparent ceiling, turning everything silver and strange. Clara stepped inside and immediately felt her shoulders loosen, away from the eyes, away from the judgment. You come here often. Not a question. Whenever I can. Clara moved between the planters, trailing her fingers over unfamiliar leaves. Lady Ashford collects specimens from all over the empire. This orchid is from India. Those ferns are from the Americas. It's like traveling without leaving London. You want to travel? I want to disappear. The honesty surprised her. Go somewhere no one knows me, somewhere I'm not the Whitmore failure or the desperate spinster or the girl they laugh about at parties. Adrian had moved to stand near the door, giving her space. Where would you go? I don't know. Somewhere wild. Somewhere real. Clara touched a bloom that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale. Somewhere people are too busy surviving to care about whether you're married or what dress you're wearing or a sound. Soft. Desperate. Clara froze. Listened. There. Near the corner, beneath an overgrown palm. A flutter of movement. She dropped to her knees without thinking, dress be damned, and pushed aside the broad leaves. There, on the stone floor, was a bird. Small, brown. One wing bent at a wrong angle. Oh! The word came out wounded. Clara reached out carefully, and the bird didn't fight when she scooped it into her palms. It was trembling, dying, probably. You poor thing, how did you get in here? Windows cracked. Adrian crouched beside her, his bulk somehow not crowding. See? Top corner. Probably flew in and couldn't find its way out. Panicked, hit the glass trying. The bird's heartbeat was rapid against Clara's skin, fragile, fading. We need to help it, she said urgently. Set the wing, give it water, something. Clara. Adrian's voice was gentle. It's just a bird. It's dying. She looked up at him, and whatever he saw in her face made him stop. Because it made a mistake. Because it was trapped. Because no one noticed it suffering in here while they were all in there drinking champagne and laughing at people's pain. Understanding flickered in his eyes. All right, what do you need? They worked together in the moonlight. Adrian found clean cloth from somewhere, and Clara tore strips with shaking hands. She'd done this before. Helped the groundskeeper's wife with injured animals when she was young, before her family decided it was beneath her station. The wing needed to be immobilized. The bird needed warmth. Talk to it, Adrian said quietly. Keep it calm. So Clara did. She whispered nonsense to the trembling creature while her fingers worked, careful and sure. Told it about the conservatory, about the orchids from India, about how sometimes being trapped wasn't forever if you could just hold on a little longer. Adrian watched her. She could feel his gaze like heat on her skin. There, she finally said, cradling the bird against her chest. Its breathing had slowed, steadied, not saved maybe, but fighting. We'll need to find it somewhere safe, warm, away from cats, and I have a townhouse, grounds with a garden house. Adrian stood, offering his hand. We can settle it there. I'll have my groundskeeper look after it. You do that? For a bird? For you. He said it simply, honestly. Because watching you try to save something broken might be the most beautiful thing I've seen in years. Clara's heart stuttered. She took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. The bird nestled against her bodice, tiny and trusting. I don't understand you, she whispered. Good. I'd be boring if you did. Adrian's smile was slight but real. Come on. My carriage is outside. Unless you want to march back through that ballroom first, make a grand exit. The thought made her laugh. Actual, genuine laughter that felt foreign in her throat. I think I've caused enough scandal for one evening. Then we're just getting started. He guided her toward a side door, one hand at the small of her back. Because that wasn't scandal, Clara. That was just the opening act. Bus. Adrian's townhouse was in Mayfair, because of course it was. But inside it looked nothing like Clara expected. Where most noble homes dripped with gilt and velvet, this was all dark wood and leather, maps on the walls, books stacked in corners. It smelled like tobacco and old paper and something wild she couldn't name. The garden house is through here. Adrian led her through the main floor, past curious servants who were professional enough not to stare at the disheveled woman carrying a bird. Mrs. Davies, my housekeeper, has a way with animals. She'll know what to do. Mrs. Davies turned out to be a round Scottish woman in her 50s who took one look at the bird, nodded, and whisked it away to the garden house without asking a single question about why the Duke had brought home an unmarried woman at midnight. Clara stood in the entrance hall, suddenly aware she was alone with Adrian Blackwood in his home, unchaperoned, with her dress dirty and her hair falling from its pins. She should leave, immediately. Tea? Adrian asked, shrugging out of his formal coat like it was strangling him. Beneath, his shirt was fine but rumpled, and when he undid his cravat and tossed it aside, Clara had to look away from the exposed triangle of his throat. I should go. Probably. He headed toward what looked like a study. But you won't. The arrogance should have offended her. Instead, it made her follow. You're very sure of yourself. I'm sure of what I see. Adrian went to a sideboard, poured amber liquid into 2 glasses. You're curious. You want to know why I singled you out, why I'm not treating you like they do. He offered her a glass. Whiskey. Better than tea. Clara took it because refusing felt cowardly. The first sip burned, but the second warmed. Fine. Why? Because you're real. Adrian settled into a chair, gestured for her to take the one opposite. Everyone else in that ballroom is performing, playing roles, wearing masks so tight they've forgotten their own faces. But you... He studied her over the rim of his glass. You've given up pretending. Stop trying to fit into a world that doesn't deserve you. And that honesty, that's rarer than gold. That honesty is called giving up. No, giving up is becoming like them. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. You want to know where I was for 10 years? I was in Canada, building logging camps, managing mines, working alongside men who'd kill you for looking at them wrong. It was brutal, honest, real. And when I came back here, stepped into my title, it was like drowning in silk. All these rules, all this performance, everyone lying with every breath and calling it manners. Clara sipped her whiskey, listening. I saw you tonight, and I saw someone who'd been ground down by this world but hadn't broken, someone who'd rather save a dying bird than chase status, someone who's survived being invisible without becoming cruel. His eyes held hers. That's not giving up, Clara. That's strength they can't even comprehend. Pretty speech. She hated how much she wanted to believe it. What do you actually want from me? Permission to court you. The whiskey glass nearly slipped from her fingers. What? You heard me? Adrian didn't smile, didn't blink. I want to court you, publicly, properly. I want to take you riding in Hyde Park. I want to bring you flowers. I want every person in that ballroom to see that I've chosen you and choke on their champagne. Clara's heart was a wild thing in her chest. This is insane. Probably. It's social suicide. For you or for me. Both of us. She stood, pacing, because sitting still was impossible. You're a duke. You could have anyone, any beautiful, perfect 20-year-old debutante with a fortune and a pedigree, and I don't want them. He stood too, solid and immovable. I want the woman who kneels in the dirt for a broken bird. I want the intelligence I see behind your eyes. I want the strength it takes to survive what you've survived without becoming like them. You don't know me, but her voice was weak, so let me. Adrian stepped closer, not threatening, but present. Give me 1 month, 4 weeks. Let me court you, and if at the end you still think I'm mad or cruel or playing some game, I'll walk away. You'll never see me again. And when you realize what everyone else already knows, that I'm worth more than all of them combined. He caught her hand, his palm rough against her glove. 1 month, Clara. What do you have to lose? Everything. Her dignity. Her carefully maintained invisibility. The last shreds of peace she'd carved out of her miserable existence. But also, nothing. Because what did she actually have? A place at her family's table that came with constant humiliation. A future as the spinster aunt who haunted the edges of other people's lives. Years and years of nothing stretching ahead until she died, and they sighed in relief. 4 weeks, she heard herself say. But when this ends badly, and it will, you don't get to act surprised. Adrian's smile was slow and dangerous. Deal. He raised her gloved hand to his lips, and even through the fabric, she felt the heat of his mouth. This was a mistake. Clara knew it bone deep, but maybe, just once, she wanted to make a mistake that was entirely her own. The gossip reached Clara before breakfast. She woke in her narrow room in her brother's townhouse because, of course, she didn't even have her own residence, had to depend on Thomas's charity, to her lady's maid practically vibrating with barely suppressed excitement. Miss Clara, you won't believe what they're saying. I can imagine. Clara sat up, head pounding. She'd barely slept, mind churning over whiskey and promises, and the feeling of Adrian's hand holding hers. The Duke of Northridge left the Ashford ball with you, alone, at midnight. We weren't alone, Clara stopped. Technically, they had been. No chaperone, no family member. Just the two of them in his carriage, in his home, drinking whiskey in his study while moonlight streamed through the windows. Mrs. Winters from next door said her cousin's friend saw his carriage leave and you were inside, and enough. Clara's hands were shaking. She clasped them together. Help me dress. I need to speak with my brother. Thomas was waiting for her in his study. So was Aunt Marjorie, and Beatrice, and Clara's older sister Helen, summoned from her own home across the city. The intervention had already formed. Sit down. Thomas's voice was ice. He was 35, handsome, successful, everything Clara wasn't. We need to discuss your behavior last night. Clara remained standing. I went for air. The Duke of Northridge accompanied me. Nothing improper occurred. You left. With a man. Unchaperoned. Aunt Marjorie's voice could have frozen flame. Do you have any idea what people are saying? The damage you've done to this family's reputation? The damage I've done? Something hot and sharp rose in Clara's chest. I've spent 32 years being your family's punching bag. Your cautionary tale. Your proof of charity, and now that someone has shown me the slightest bit of respect, suddenly I'm the problem? Respect? Helen laughed, bitter and sharp. Clara, he's playing with you. Men like Blackwood don't court women like you. They humiliate them. He probably made some bet with his friends. Enough. Clara's voice cracked like a whip. She didn't recognize the sound coming from her throat. You don't get to tell me what men want or don't want. None of you do. You've made it clear every day of my life that I'm worthless, unmarriageable, a burden. So why do you care if the Duke of Northridge decides to ruin himself on me? Silence. Shocked. Absolute silence. Thomas recovered first. You will end this. Today. You will send him a letter declining any further association, and you will... No. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. I beg your pardon. Thomas's face was turning red. No. Clara's heart was thunder, but her voice stayed steady. He asked to court me. I said yes, and unless you plan to lock me in my room, I'm going to accept his calls. Then you can accept them somewhere else. Aunt Marjorie stood, rustling with indignation. Thomas, tell her. Make it clear. Thomas's jaw worked. If you pursue this association, you are no longer welcome in this house. We will not support you. We will not claim you. You will be entirely on your own. Clara waited for the fear, the panic, the desperate need to apologize and beg and make herself small again. It didn't come. Instead, she felt something like wings unfurling in her chest. Broken maybe, but ready to try. Then I suppose I should pack. She turned toward the door. Clara! Helen's voice stopped her. Don't be a fool. He'll tire of you within a week. And then where will you be? You have no money, no prospects, no... Dignity? Clara looked back at her beautiful sister, her perfect sister, her sister who'd made a good match and produced an heir and done everything right. Maybe not, but I'll have something you don't. I'll have chosen myself. She walked out and didn't look back. Adrian arrived at noon with a carriage and 6 trunks. Clara watched from her window as servants loaded her pathetic belongings. How had she accumulated so little in 32 years, while her family pretended not to see? Thomas had made good on his threat. She was persona non grata now, invisible in a new and final way. She should be terrified, should be sobbing into her pillows. Instead, she felt light, untethered, free. Ready? Adrian stood in the doorway of her room, looking too large for the delicate space. He'd come himself instead of sending servants. Propriety be damned. Where am I going? Clara asked. You have options. He leaned against the doorframe, casual and certain. I own a manor house in Derbyshire. Quiet. Private. You could stay there, and I'd visit when proper. Or... His eyes held hers. My townhouse has a west wing, separate entrance, separate staff, entirely proper. You'd be close enough for calling hours, but far enough for reputation. You planned this. I prepared for this. He crossed his arms. I know what they're like. Knew they'd push you out the second I showed real interest. So yes, I made arrangements. Clara should be insulted, should be angry at the presumption. The townhouse, she said instead. If you're going to scandal everyone, we might as well do it thoroughly. His smile was sharp and approving. Excellent choice. One more thing. He pulled an envelope from his coat. Clara took it, confused, and opened it to find a bank draft for £500. What is this? Independence. Adrian straightened. It's yours. Put it in your own account, so you know that no matter what happens with us, you have options. You're not trapped. Not by me, not by them, not by anyone. Clara stared at the paper. £500. A fortune. Freedom. I can't. You can. You will. He stepped closer, voice low. I meant what I said, Clara. I want to court you, but I want you to have the power to walk away if I prove myself unworthy. I want you to choose me because you want to, not because you have no other choice. Her throat burned. This is the strangest courtship in the history of England. Good. The usual ones bore me to tears. He offered his hand. Come on. Mrs. Davies is preparing the West Wing, and I believe our bird made it through the night. Thought you'd want to check on it. Clara took his hand. Let him lead her down the stairs, past her family's turned backs, into the carriage that smelled like leather and possibility. As they pulled away from the townhouse where she'd spent 3 miserable years, after her father's death, after the last of her tiny inheritance ran dry, Clara looked back once. Thomas stood in the window, watching. His face was unreadable. Clara turned forward and didn't look back again. The west wing of Adrian's townhouse was larger than any room Clara had ever called her own. 4 rooms, a bedroom, a sitting room, a study, and a private bathroom with a tub deep enough to drown in. The walls were papered in soft blue, the furniture elegant but comfortable, the windows overlooking a garden that should have been impossible in London. Mrs. Davies will attend you, Adrian said from the doorway, maintaining propriety even now. Anything you need? Ask. Anything you want changed? Say so. This is your space. Clara stood in the center of the bedroom, turning slowly. I don't know what to do. Whatever you want. He smiled. Read, rest, visit the bird. Tomorrow, if you're willing, I'd like to take you riding, show you Hyde Park at dawn before the masses arrive. But today you should just breathe. He left before she could respond. Left her alone in rooms that were hers, in a house where no one would mock her, with money in the bank and choices ahead instead of just endurance. Clara sat on the bed, her bed, and waited for the fear. It still didn't come. Instead, she felt something fragile and fierce taking root in her chest, something that felt dangerous like hope. The bird, a sparrow, Mrs. Davies informed her later, was recovering in the garden house. Its wing was splinted, its breathing steady. It watched Clara with bright, suspicious eyes. You and me both, Clara whispered to it, trying to figure out if this is real or just another way to fall. But the bird's heart beat strong beneath her finger, and hers, for the first time in years, matched it. Dawn came cold and gray, the kind of morning that made London feel like the edge of the world. Clara stood at her window watching fog roll through Adrian's garden, thick enough to drown in. She hadn't slept, couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Thomas's face, heard Aunt Marjorie's voice calling her a fool. Maybe they were right. A soft knock. Miss Clara! His Grace is asking if you're still willing to ride this morning. Mrs. Davies stood in the doorway with tea and something that looked like sympathy. The housekeeper was nobody's fool. She knew exactly what it meant when a duke installed an unmarried woman in his home, reputation be damned. Tell him I'll be down in 20 minutes. Wear something warm. He rides like he's got demons chasing him. Clara dressed in her oldest riding habit, dark green wool that had seen better years but still fit. Her hands shook as she pinned her hair. This was real. She was really doing this. Stepping into the lion's den with a man who claimed to see something in her that no one else ever had. Adrian was waiting in the stable yard, holding the reins of 2 horses. His was a massive black gelding that looked like it could kick through walls. Hers was a gray mare with kind eyes. Her name's Ash, Adrian said, running a hand down the mare's neck. She's steady, won't spook easy. You're assuming I can ride. You grew up in this country before your father died. Thomas mentioned it once, years ago. Adrian's smile was slight. I pay attention. Clara took the reins, and the mare nuzzled her shoulder. Something in her chest loosened. What's his name? Ghost. Because he moves like smoke when he wants to. Adrian swung into the saddle with the ease of someone who'd been riding since before he could walk. We'll take the back paths to the park. Avoid the main roads. Ashamed to be seen with me already? His eyes sharpened. Protecting you from the morning crowds. But if you'd rather make a spectacle, we can trot straight down Piccadilly. Clara pulled herself into the saddle, grateful she remembered how, and gathered the reins. Lead the way, Your Grace. They rode through London's sleeping streets, past shuttered shops and early vendors setting up stalls. The fog turned everything into ghosts and suggestions. Clara followed Adrian's broad back, watched how he moved with the horse like they were one creature, all controlled power and casual grace. Hyde Park at dawn was empty except for a few dedicated riders and the groundskeepers preparing for the day. Adrian led them off the main paths into the wilder sections where trees grew thick and the city felt miles away instead of just beyond the fence line. Tell me something true, he said when they'd slowed to a walk, horses side by side. Something you've never told anyone. Clara's hands tightened on the reins. Why? Because I want to know you, the real you. Not the version your family created or the one society decided you should be. The fog swirled around them. In the gray light, Adrian looked almost otherworldly, too solid, too real for the manufactured world of the ton. I'm angry, Clara heard herself say. All the time, furious. I smile and nod and play the grateful spinster, but inside I'm screaming. I want to burn down every ballroom that ever made me feel small. I want to watch them all choke on their own cruelty. She stopped, horrified. I'm sorry. You shouldn't. Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't apologize for being human. Don't make yourself smaller because you think I can't handle the truth. Most men want women to be soft, pleasant. I'm not most men. Adrian pulled Ghost to a halt and Ash followed suit. You want to know what I did in Canada? Really did. Beyond building an empire? Clara nodded. I fought. Constantly. Men tried to take what was mine, thought I was soft because I had a title, thought I'd fold. His jaw tightened. I broke noses, cracked ribs, left men bleeding in the snow because the frontier doesn't care about your breeding or your manners. It cares about whether you can survive. You're telling me this to what? Prove you're dangerous? I'm telling you this so you understand. I don't want soft. I don't want pleasant. I want real. I want the woman who's angry enough to burn it all down but strong enough not to. He turned in the saddle to face her fully. Your fury doesn't scare me, Clara. It makes me want to hand you the matches. Something hot and fierce rose in her throat. You don't know what you're asking for. Then show me. They stared at each other while the horses shifted beneath them and the fog pressed close. Clara felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd kept locked down for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Race me, she said suddenly. To that oak tree, the big one at the bend. Adrian's grin was pure challenge. You're on. They took off like bullets, and Clara let Ash have her head. The mare was faster than she looked, and Clara remembered the feeling of wind and speed and freedom. Behind her, Adrian and Ghost thundered close, but she'd gotten the jump, and she wasn't giving it up. She reached the oak 3 lengths ahead and pulled Ash up, breathless and laughing. Adrian reined in beside her, eyes bright. You hustled me. You assumed I couldn't ride. I assumed you'd be cautious. Everyone does. Clara's heart was racing, blood singing. That's how I've survived. Let them think I'm harmless. Let them think I'm nothing. And then you show them what you really are. Adrian swung down from his horse and came to stand beside her stirrup. Get down. Why? Because I'm going to kiss you, and I'd rather not do it while you're 5 feet in the air. Clara's breath stopped. That's highly improper. That's the point. He held up his hand. Get down, Clara. She should refuse. Should maintain some shred of propriety. Should. She kicked free of the stirrup and slid down, and Adrian caught her waist, steadied her. They stood too close, fog wrapping around them like a curtain. Tell me no, he said quietly. Tell me to stop, and I will. No questions. No consequences. Clara looked up at him, at this strange, dangerous man who'd appeared in her life like a storm, and every reason to refuse died in her throat. Don't stop. His mouth found hers, and it was nothing like she'd imagined a kiss would be. Not soft or tentative or polite. It was fierce and claiming and absolutely certain, like he was writing his name across her soul. Clara grabbed his coat to stay upright, and he made a sound low in his throat that sent heat spiraling through her body. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to court you in front of everyone," he said roughly. "I'm going to make them watch while I choose you over and over. And when they whisper and mock and try to tear us apart, I'm going to stand in front of their cruelty and dare them to go through me to get to you. They'll destroy you. Let them try." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "I've survived worse than London gossip, but I need you to decide if you're willing to survive it with me. Because it's going to get ugly, Clara. They're going to say terrible things. Your family will disown you completely. Society will close ranks, and I can't protect you from all of it." Clara's hands were still fisted in his coat. She should let go, should step back, should think this through with her head instead of her heart. But when had thinking ever saved her? "I'm already disowned," she said. "Already outcast. So what exactly do I have to lose?" Adrian's smile was sharp enough to cut. "Absolutely nothing. Which makes you the most dangerous woman in London." He kissed her again, and Clara kissed him back. And somewhere in the fog, a bird called out like a warning. She ignored it. The gossip reached critical mass by noon. Clara was in the West Wing sitting room attempting to read when Mrs. Davies appeared with a stack of calling cards. "They're circling like sharks," the housekeeper said grimly. "Half of them want to confirm the scandal. The other half want to gawk." Clara looked at the cards. Lady Pembroke. Mrs. Ashford. The Duchess of something or other. Women who'd never acknowledged her existence before were suddenly desperate for an audience. "Tell them I'm not receiving." His Grace thought you'd say that. He also said if you want to receive them and make them squirm, he'll back whatever play you make. Clara set down her book. "Where is he?" "Meeting with his solicitor. Something about the scandal affecting his business interests." Mrs. Davies' expression said exactly what she thought of that. Men in expensive suits acting like the world's ending because a duke took a fancy to the wrong woman. "I should go." "You should stay." The housekeeper's voice was firm. "You run now. You prove them right. You're not some dirty secret to be hidden. You're the woman he's courting, and they can choke on it." Clara looked at the stranger who was defending her, this employee who had no reason to care. "Why are you being kind to me?" Mrs. Davies' face softened. "Because I was you once. Different circumstances, but the same story. The world decided I was worthless, and I almost believed them. Then I found work in a duke's household full of strange frontier attitudes, and I remembered I was more than what they said." She gestured at the calling cards. "So receive them or don't. But do it because you choose to, not because they've scared you into hiding." After she left, Clara sat with the cards in her lap. She could hide, could avoid the confrontation, No, she was done hiding. "Mrs. Davies?" Clara stood, decision made. "Tell them I'm receiving, all of them, at 3 o'clock. And make sure there's tea." The housekeeper's smile was fierce and approving. "I'll prepare enough for an army." They descended at 3 sharp like vultures on fresh meat. Clara received them in Adrian's formal sitting room because using the West Wing would admit she was separate, hidden, ashamed. She wore her best dress, a deep burgundy that made her skin look less sallow, and pinned her hair with the one good piece of jewelry she owned. Lady Pembroke arrived first, all false smiles and sharp eyes. "My dear Miss Whitmore, how unexpected to find you here. His Grace was kind enough to offer me residence while I seek more permanent accommodations." Clara's voice was steady. She'd practiced this. "Please, sit." They came in waves. 12 women, all told, settling onto furniture and sipping tea while their eyes catalogued everything. Clara could see them noting the quality of the room, the obvious expense, the fact that she was here at all. Mrs. Ashford, the hostess from the ball, was the one who finally went for blood. "We're all simply dying to understand," she said sweetly, What exactly transpired between you and the Duke of Northridge at my ball? There are such wild rumors. Clara set down her teacup with steady hands. We walked. We talked. We discovered we enjoyed each other's company. His Grace has asked to court me. I've accepted. Silence. Absolute shocked silence. Then Lady Pembroke laughed. Actually laughed. High and cruel. Court you? My dear child, men like Blackwood don't court women like you. They choose carefully how you finish that sentence. Adrian's voice cut through the room like a blade. Every head turned. He stood in the doorway, still in his riding clothes, looking like he'd just walked out of the wilderness. Dangerous. Unpolished. Entirely out of place in this drawing room full of silk and propriety. And completely unbothered by it. Your Grace, Mrs. Ashford recovered first, smile fixed and brittle. We were just interrogating the woman I'm courting? Yes, I heard. He moved into the room, and they all shifted like prey animals aware of a predator. Since you're all so curious, let me make this exceptionally clear. He crossed to where Clara sat and took the chair beside her. Close. Deliberately close. I am courting Miss Whitmore, exclusively, publicly, with the full intention of making her my Duchess. Someone gasped. Might have been the Duchess of something or other. You can't be serious, Lady Pembroke said faintly. I'm completely serious. Adrian's gaze swept the room, and Clara watched 12 of London's most formidable women flinch. And if any of you have opinions about my choice, I suggest you keep them to yourselves. Because I don't particularly care what you think, but I do care about Clara's comfort. And anyone who makes her uncomfortable will find themselves very unwelcome in my circles. Your circles? Mrs. Ashford's voice climbed. Your Grace, you're one man. You can't possibly think, I control 3 seats in Parliament. I own half the shipping that comes through Liverpool. My business interests employ 4,000 people across England. And I've spent the last decade building relationships with men who actually work for their fortunes. Adrian's smile was cold. So yes, Mrs. Ashford, my circles. And they're significantly more influential than you might think. Clara watched the women recalculate. Watched them remember that Adrian wasn't some bored aristocrat playing at business. He was a genuine force, someone who'd built power outside the traditional structures and didn't need their approval to maintain it. Of course, Your Grace. Mrs. Ashford's voice was sugar over poison now. We meant no offense. We simply want to ensure Miss Whitmore understands the scrutiny such an arrangement will bring. I understand perfectly. Clara found her voice, surprised by how calm it sounded. I understand that you're threatened by the fact that someone saw value in me when you all decided I had none. I understand that my happiness challenges your entire worldview, and I understand, she stood, chin high, that your opinions matter exactly as much as I allow them to, which is none at all. Adrian stood beside her, and the pride in his eyes was a physical thing. I think, he said quietly, visiting hours are over, Mrs. Davies will show you out. They fled like scattered birds, all outrage and wounded dignity. Only Lady Pembroke paused at the door. You're making a terrible mistake, she said to Clara. Both of you. This won't end well. Probably not, Clara replied, but it will end honestly, which is more than I can say for most marriages in your circle. When they were gone, Clara's knees gave out. She sat hard, hands shaking. Adrian knelt in front of her, taking her cold fingers in his warm ones. You were magnificent. I was terrified. You were both. He brought her hands to his lips. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Clara. It's doing the thing anyway. Where did you learn that? The frontier? My mother. She told me that before she died. His expression went distant. She was a miner's daughter who married a duke. Society ate her alive. But she never bent, never broke, just kept being exactly who she was until they had no choice but to acknowledge her. Did they? Acknowledge her? Eventually. But it cost her. Adrian's grip tightened. I won't lie to you. This is going to be brutal. They're going to attack you in ways you can't imagine. Your family will weaponize every childhood embarrassment. Society will dissect your every move. And some days you're going to want to run back to the safety of invisibility. Clara pulled her hands free and cupped his face. Then I guess we'd better make me visible in a way they can't ignore. His eyes darkened. What are you suggesting? You said you want to court me publicly, properly, so do it. Clara's heart was racing, but her voice stayed steady. Take me to the opera, to dinner at Claridge's, to Parliament when you have a seat there. Make them see me so often they can't pretend I don't exist. That's not courting, Clara. That's warfare. Good. She smiled, and it felt dangerous. I'm tired of being quiet. Adrian surged forward and kissed her hard, possessive, claiming. When he pulled back, they were both breathing like they'd been running. Tomorrow night, he said roughly. Covent Garden, opening night of the new production. I'll have a box. We'll sit where everyone can see. I don't have anything appropriate to wear. Yes, you do. He stood, pulled her up with him. Mrs. Davies has a dressmaker coming at 4. My mother's jewels are in the vault. You're going to walk into that opera house looking like exactly what you are, someone worthy of a duke's attention. Clara's throat burned. This is too much. The money, the clothes, It's nothing. Adrian tipped her chin up. And it's yours. All of it. Because you deserve beautiful things, Clara. You deserve to be seen and valued and chosen. And I'm going to make damn sure you know it. She kissed him then, standing on her toes to reach, and he caught her waist and lifted her like she weighed nothing. When he set her down, they were both flushed, both shaking. I should go, Adrian said, not moving, before I do something that really scandalizes the servants. Probably wise. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock. We'll have an early dinner before the opera. He backed toward the door like he couldn't quite make himself leave. Wear blue. It matches your eyes. My eyes are gray. They're blue when you're angry, and I want everyone to see them burning. He left before she could respond, and Clara stood in the middle of the sitting room, feeling like she'd just survived a hurricane. Mrs. Davies appeared in the doorway. The dressmaker's here, miss, and she's brought half her shop. Clara followed the housekeeper to find the West Wing transformed into a boutique. Fabrics everywhere, 3 assistants measuring and pinning, and a severe-looking woman with shrewd eyes examining Clara like she was a particularly interesting puzzle. Miss Whitmore, the dressmaker, Madame Laurent, according to Mrs. Davies, circled Clara slowly. His Grace has very specific requirements. You are to be dressed as befits your station. I don't have a station. You have his attention. That's station enough. Madame Laurent snapped her fingers, and the assistants descended. Now hold still. We have 12 hours to make you unforgettable. The dress was midnight blue silk that caught the light like water. The neckline was lower than anything Clara had ever worn, the waist tailored to show she actually had a figure beneath all those shapeless day dresses. The sleeves were elegant, the train just long enough to make a statement. Clara stared at herself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman looking back. Perfect. Madame Laurent made a final adjustment. You look like someone worth fighting for. Adrian's mother's jewels were sapphires set in silver, a necklace that sat heavy and cool against her throat, earrings that caught the light when she moved. Mrs. Davies did something with her hair that made it look intentionally severe instead of accidentally plain, piled high with a few strategic curls. You're going to stop hearts, the housekeeper said quietly. Clara's hands shook as she pulled on long white gloves. I'm going to vomit. Do it after you leave. The dress cost a fortune. Adrian was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, and when he looked up and saw her, something crossed his face that made Clara's breath catch. Devastating, he said quietly, offering his hand. They won't know what hit them. The carriage ride to Covent Garden was too short and too long all at once. Adrian sat across from her. Propriety demanded it, but his eyes never left her face. Last chance, he said as they pulled up to the opera house. We can turn around. Go back. No one would blame you. Clara looked through the window at the crowds gathering, at the lights and the glamour and the world that had always shut her out. No, she said firmly. We go in, we sit in your box, and we watch them watch us. Adrian's smile was fierce and proud. Then let's give them a show. He helped her down from the carriage, and the moment her foot touched the pavement, the whispers started. Hundreds of voices creating a wave of shock and scandal and pure undiluted disbelief. That's her, the spinster, the one Blackwood's courting. She doesn't look that plain up close. Is he mad? Is she pregnant? What possible reason? Adrian tucked her hand into his elbow and led her through the crowd like they owned the building, which, Clara realized as they climbed the stairs, they kind of did. His box was the best in the house, center position, impossible to miss. They settled into their seats, and every opera glass in the building turned their direction. Clara forced herself to sit straight, to look calm, to act like she belonged here. "Breathe," Adrian murmured beside her. "You're doing perfectly." "They're staring." "Let them. They've been staring at you your whole life like you weren't worth seeing. Now they're staring because you're impossible to look away from." The opera started, but Clara couldn't focus on the stage. All she could feel was the weight of hundreds of eyes, judging, calculating, trying to understand what Adrian Blackwood saw in the invisible woman. At intermission, Adrian stood and offered his hand. "Walk with me." "Where?" "The promenade, where everyone goes to see and be seen." Clara's stomach clenched. "That's exactly what we came here to do." His hand stayed steady. "Trust me." She took his hand and let him lead her out of the box, down the stairs, into the crowded promenade where London's elite gathered to gossip and posture. The moment they appeared, the crowd parted like water. Adrian led her slowly through the space, nodding to acquaintances, stopping occasionally to make introductions. Each time he presented her the same way. "May I introduce Miss Clara Whitmore, my intended, not companion, not friend, his intended." Clara watched their faces transform. Shock, calculation, barely concealed disdain. But they smiled. They nodded. They acknowledged her because Adrian left them no choice. They were halfway through the promenade when a familiar voice cut through the noise. "Adrian, a word!" Thomas, her brother, standing with Aunt Marjorie in a cluster of their circle, all of them radiating disapproval. Adrian's hand tightened on Clara's. "Not now, Whitmore." "I think now is perfect." Thomas stepped forward, and Clara saw the fury in his eyes. "You've made your point. You've humiliated our family quite enough. Now end this farce before you destroy what little reputation Clara has left." "Clara's reputation," Adrian said quietly, "was destroyed by her family long before I entered the picture. I'm simply giving her a new one." "As what? Your mistress? Your charity case?" Aunt Marjorie's voice dripped venom. "Do you have any idea what people are saying? That she trapped you, seduced you, used some desperate ploy to—" "Enough!" Clara's voice cracked across the space like a whip. Every head turned. The entire promenade fell silent. Clara stepped forward, away from Adrian's protective hand, and faced her family directly. "You spent 32 years making me believe I was worthless, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps of dignity you allowed me, that my value was measured entirely by my ability to attract a husband. And when I failed at that, I had no value at all." Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. "And now that someone sees me differently, you can't stand it. Because if I'm not worthless, then everything you did to me was cruelty instead of kindness, and you can't live with that." "Clara," Thomas started. "No." She cut him off. "I'm not done. You want to know what people are saying? They're saying the Duke of Northridge chose me, publicly, deliberately, over every beautiful, perfect, appropriate woman in London. And that choice makes you all look like fools for not seeing what he saw." "He'll tire of you," Aunt Marjorie hissed. "And when he does, you'll have nothing. No family, no prospects, nothing." "Then I'll have nothing." Clara lifted her chin. "But I'll have it honestly, and I'll have it on my own terms, which is more than you can say." She turned her back on them, her family, her blood, her tormentors, and walked back to Adrian's side. He was staring at her like she'd just conquered nations. "Ready to go back?" she asked quietly. "Ready to go anywhere you lead." They walked out of the promenade together while the crowd stood frozen in shock, and Clara felt something like wings spreading in her chest. She'd burned the bridge. There was no going back now, and she'd never felt more free. The carriage lurched over cobblestones, and Clara's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She'd folded them in her lap, pressed them against her thighs, tried to still them through pure will, but they kept trembling like leaves in a storm. Adrian sat across from her in the darkness, watching, always watching. "Say it," she finally managed. "Whatever you're thinking." "I'm thinking you just declared war on your entire family in front of half of London's elite." His voice was measured, careful, And I'm trying to decide if you realize what that means. It means they'll hate me more than they already do. Clara looked out the window at the passing streets. Hardly a change. No, it means they'll stop treating you like an embarrassment and start treating you like a threat. Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. People can ignore embarrassments. Threats have to be neutralized. The word hung in the air between them like smoke. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to prepare you. His jaw was tight. Thomas looked at you tonight like he wanted you dead. Your aunt looked at you like you'd committed murder. And every person in that promenade is going home to write letters, spread rumors, sharpen their knives. Then let them. Clara forced her hands still. I'm done being afraid of what they'll do to me. They've already done their worst. Have they? Adrian's eyes were dark in the dim light. But what? Because from where I'm sitting, they've barely started. The carriage pulled up to his townhouse, and Clara climbed down before the footman could assist her. Her legs felt like water, but she made them work. Made herself walk through the door with her head high. Mrs. Davies was waiting in the entry hall, face grim. There's a man here to see you, Your Grace. Said it's urgent. Who? Your solicitor, Mr. Pemberton. He's in the study. Looks like he's seen a ghost. Adrian's expression hardened. He glanced at Clara. Wait in the sitting room. I'll handle this. No. Clara straightened. If this is about me, I have a right to hear it. Clara, I'm not hiding anymore. We agreed. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval or concern, she couldn't tell. Fine, but let me do the talking. The study was warm, a fire crackling in the grate. Mr. Pemberton stood near the window, a thin man in his 50s with the look of someone who'd just survived a shipwreck. Your Grace? Miss Whitmore. He nodded to each of them. I apologize for the intrusion, but we have a situation. Explain. Adrian moved to the sideboard, poured whiskey into 3 glasses, handed one to Clara without asking if she wanted it. Pemberton took his glass with shaking hands. Your business partners, the shipping consortium. They've called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They're threatening to dissolve the partnership unless you address certain concerns about your personal affairs. Clara's stomach dropped. Let me guess. Adrian's voice was ice. They're concerned about my choice of companion. Think it reflects poorly on the business. They're concerned about stability, reputation, the optics of a duke courting a woman of, forgive me, Miss Whitmore, questionable standing while managing investments worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. Questionable standing, Clara set her glass down before she threw it. Because I'm not rich? Not connected? Not good enough for their precious consortium? Because they're cowards, Adrian said flatly. And because Thomas Whitmore has been in their ears, haven't you, Pemberton? The solicitor winced. Mr. Whitmore did attend tonight's dinner meeting. He suggested that your attachment might be affecting your judgment, that perhaps the partnership needed to consider restructuring to protect their interests. Thomas was at their dinner meeting, Clara's voice came out hollow. My brother is actively sabotaging you. Your brother is protecting his investments. Adrian downed his whiskey in one swallow. He's a silent partner in 2 of the shipping ventures, has been for 3 years. I should have seen this coming. Can they actually dissolve the partnership? Clara asked. Technically, yes. Pemberton pulled out papers from his case. The contract has a morality clause. If the majority of partners vote that one member's personal conduct is damaging the consortium's reputation, they can force a buyout at significantly reduced valuation. How significantly? You'd lose approximately 40% of your investment, close to £200,000. The number hit like a physical blow. Clara felt the air leave her lungs. 200,000, she repeated faintly. Because of me. Because of them, Adrian corrected sharply. Because they're using me to get what they want. Thomas has been trying to take control of the consortium for years. This is just his opening. Then end it. Clara stood, her legs somehow working. Tell them you're ending the courtship, that it was a mistake, that I'm... Sit down. Adrian's voice cracked like a whip. Clara sat. He turned to Pemberton. Tell the consortium I'll be at their meeting tomorrow. 9 sharp. And tell them to have their lawyers ready, because if they want to use morality clauses against me, I have a few clauses of my own to invoke. Your Grace, with respect, Fighting this could drag on for months. The legal fees alone. I don't care. Adrian's smile was sharp enough to cut. They want to play games with my personal life? Fine, but they're going to learn I play rougher than they do. Pemberton left looking like he'd aged 10 years. The moment the door closed, Clara rounded on Adrian. You can't do this. You can't risk your entire fortune because of me. Watch me. I'm serious. £200,000, Adrian. That's generational wealth. That's security. That's nothing compared to what they're really trying to take. He caught her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. They don't care about the money, Clara. They care about control. They want to prove that I'll bend when they apply pressure, that I'll sacrifice what I want to keep what I have. And if I do that, if I let them dictate who I can court, then I've already lost everything that matters. But the business will survive. I built an empire once. I can do it again. His grip tightened. But if I walk away from you now, if I let them win, then I become exactly like them. Someone who values money over people, power over principle, and I'd rather be broke than be that. Claire's throat burned. You're insane. Probably. He pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. But I meant what I said, every word, and I'm not backing down. Sleep was impossible. Clara lay in her bed in the West Wing, staring at the ceiling, doing math in her head. £200,000, 40% of Adrian's fortune, because of her. Because he'd chosen to see her, to value her, to defend her against a world determined to prove she wasn't worth defending. She should leave, should pack her things and disappear before he lost everything. But where would she go? Back to Thomas, who'd orchestrated this whole thing. Back to the edges of ballrooms and the scraps of other people's lives. A soft knock pulled her from the spiral. Miss Clara? Mrs. Davies' voice, quiet through the door. Are you awake? Clara wrapped herself in a robe and opened the door. The housekeeper stood in the hallway with a lamp and an expression Clara couldn't read. There's someone here to see you, at the servants' entrance. Says it's urgent. Who? Your sister, Mrs. Caldwell. Helen. Clara's heart lurched. Tell her I'm not receiving. I tried. She says if you don't come down, she'll camp on the doorstep until morning. Mrs. Davies' mouth twitched. She seems rather determined. Clara followed the housekeeper down the back stairs to the servants' entrance. Helen stood in the small courtyard, wrapped in a cloak, her face pale in the lamplight. You came, she said when Clara appeared. I'm here. Say what you came to say. Helen's gaze flicked to Mrs. Davies, who'd stationed herself just inside the door, clearly not planning to give them privacy. Thomas sent me, Helen said finally. He wants to make you an offer. I'm not interested in anything Thomas wants. Just listen. Helen stepped closer, and Clara could see dark circles under her eyes. He'll convince the consortium to back down. He'll stop the legal action. He'll even publicly support your courtship if you do one thing. Clara's stomach clenched. What? Convince Adrian to transfer controlling interest in the shipping consortium to a neutral third party. Someone the partners trust. Someone who can manage the business without personal entanglements. You mean Thomas? I mean someone responsible. Helen's voice rose. Clara, please be reasonable. This isn't just about you anymore. Adrian's about to lose a fortune defending something that won't even last. You know it won't. Men like him don't marry women like you. Not really. Not permanently. The words hit like knives, precision placed to wound. Get out, Clara said quietly. I'm trying to help you. Don't you see? This is your chance to salvage something from this disaster. Thomas will give you money, a settlement, enough to live independently. You won't have to go back to being invisible, but you won't have to keep pretending Adrian actually wants. Clara slapped her. The sound cracked through the courtyard like breaking ice. Helen stumbled back, hand to her cheek, eyes wide with shock. I said get out. Clara's voice shook, but her hand was steady. Tell Thomas his offer is refused. Tell him I'd rather watch Adrian lose everything than give him 1 inch of power. And tell him... She stepped closer, and Helen flinched. But that the next time he wants to threaten me, he should have the courage to do it himself instead of sending you. Helen's face crumpled. For a moment she looked young, lost, almost human. "You're going to regret this," she whispered. "Maybe, but it'll be my regret, my choice, my life." Clara turned back to the door. "Show her out, Mrs. Davies, and make sure the gates are locked behind her." Back in her room, Clara's hands started shaking again. She'd just refused her family's final offer. Burned the last bridge. There was no going back now. A tap on the connecting door to Adrian's wing. Clara opened it to find him standing there in shirt sleeves, hair disheveled, looking like he hadn't slept either. "Heard voices," he said. "You all right?" "My sister came. Thomas sent her with an offer." Adrian's jaw tightened. "What kind of offer?" Clara told him everything, watched his expression darken with each word. "He's trying to buy you," Adrian said flatly when she finished. "Bribe you to betray me." I told her no. "I know. Mrs. Davies informed me. Right after she told me you slapped your sister." His mouth twitched. She was quite impressed. "I shouldn't have—" "You should have hit her harder." Adrian stepped into the room, closed the door behind him. Improper. Scandalous. Neither of them cared. "They're escalating because they're desperate. Thomas thought he could use the consortium to force my hand, and when that didn't work, he tried to use you, which means we're winning." "Winning?" Clara laughed, the sound broken. "You're about to lose 200,000 pounds. How is that winning?" "Because they're afraid." He caught her hands, stilled their trembling. "If they thought you were temporary, if they thought I'd tire of you, they'd just wait it out. But they're not waiting, they're attacking, because they see what I see, that you're not going anywhere, and that terrifies them." Clara looked up at him, this man who kept choosing her when the whole world said he shouldn't. "What if Helen's right?" she whispered. "What if this doesn't last? What if you wake up one day and realize, stop?" He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I've spent 10 years making decisions based on logic and strategy and what made financial sense. Building an empire, accumulating power. And you want to know what I learned?" She nodded. "That none of it means anything without someone to share it with. Someone real. Someone who makes me feel something other than bored or angry or empty." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "You make me feel alive, Clara. Like I'm finally awake after years of sleepwalking, and I'm not giving that up for anything. Even 200,000 pounds? Even 200,000 pounds." He kissed her forehead, gentle and fierce all at once. "Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be brutal." "What are you going to do?" His smile was sharp. "Remind them why it's a mistake to threaten what's mine." The consortium met in a private room at their bank, all mahogany and leather and old money. Adrian walked in at precisely 9 o'clock with Clara on his arm and Pemberton trailing behind with enough documents to fill a carriage. The silence was immediate and absolute. Thomas sat at the head of the table, flanked by 6 other men, all older, all wealthy, all staring at Clara like she was something infectious they'd tracked in on their shoes. "Blackwood," Thomas's voice was cold. "This is a private business meeting. Your companion is not welcome. Miss Whitmore is my intended wife." Adrian pulled out a chair for Clara, waited until she sat before taking his own seat. "Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of her." "We called this meeting to discuss your judgment," said Lord Harwick, a silver-haired merchant with holdings in textiles. "Not to entertain your current infatuation." My current infatuation is the reason we're here, isn't it?" Adrian leaned back, utterly at ease. "So, let's dispense with the pleasantries. You want me out of the consortium. Thomas has convinced you my personal life makes me unfit to manage our joint interests. You're prepared to invoke the morality clause and force a buyout at reduced valuation. Did I miss anything?" The men exchanged glances. "It's not personal, Blackwood," another partner said, Davies, the shipping magnate. "But we have investors to consider. Reputation matters in our business, and your association with Miss Whitmore raises questions about your priorities." "My association with Miss Whitmore is none of your business." "It is when it affects our bottom line," Thomas cut in. "You've become distracted, reckless, more concerned with defending a woman of no consequence than with managing millions of pounds in cargo." Clara's fingernails dug into her palms under the table. Adrian's hand found hers squeezed once. "Here's what's going to happen," Adrian said calmly. "You're going to withdraw this action. You're going to issue a formal statement supporting my leadership, and you're going to do it before close of business today." Thomas laughed, actually laughed. "Or what? You'll sue us?" Tie us up in court for months? You don't have the leverage, Blackwood. We hold the majority vote. You hold the majority vote in this consortium. Adrian nodded to Pemberton, who began distributing documents. But you seem to have forgotten that I built my fortune outside your little club, and I've been making arrangements. What arrangements? Harwick demanded, scanning the papers. I've sold my interest in 3 of our joint ventures to competitors. As of this morning, those competitors now hold controlling interest. They're very interested in restructuring operations, bringing in new management. Adrian's smile was cold. Your management? The color drained from Davies's face. You can't do that. The contracts have clauses allowing for sale to approved buyers. I got approval from the Board of Trade this morning. 5 o'clock, to be exact. Adrian stood, buttoning his coat. So, here's the situation. You can continue this vendetta against my personal life, and I'll continue selling off my interests to people who will make your business lives very uncomfortable. Or you can accept that who I choose to court is my concern. Withdraw this action, and we can all go back to making money. This is blackmail, Thomas hissed. This is business. Adrian helped Clara to her feet. You taught me that, Whitmore. Everything's negotiable. Everyone has a price. And the price of coming after Clara is your control over 3 very profitable ventures. Choose wisely. He guided Clara toward the door, while 6 wealthy men sat in stunned silence. They were halfway down the hall when Thomas's voice echoed after them. This isn't over, Blackwood. Adrian didn't turn around. Yes, it is. You just haven't realized it yet. Outside, Clara's knees nearly gave out. Adrian caught her elbow, steadied her. Did that really just happen? She managed. That really just happened. His expression was grim. And now they know I'm serious. You sold your interests, gave up control, because of me. I repositioned my assets to protect what matters. He helped her into the waiting carriage. There's a difference. Adrian, I'm not done. He climbed in beside her, and the carriage lurched into motion. Thomas won't accept this. He'll retaliate, probably publicly, probably soon. How? I don't know yet, but he's cornered now, and cornered animals are dangerous. Adrian's jaw was tight. We need to be ready for anything. They weren't ready for what came next. The scandal sheet appeared 2 days later. Clara was having breakfast in the West Wing when Mrs. Davies burst in without knocking, her face white as chalk. Miss Clara, you need to see this. The paper was cheap, the kind of gossip rag that circulated through servants' halls and coffee houses. But the headline was impossible to miss. Duke's desperation, the truth about the Whitmore woman. Clara's hands went numb as she read. Sources close to the Duke of Northridge reveal the shocking truth behind his sudden courtship of Miss Clara Whitmore, 32, the unmarried sister of prominent investor Thomas Whitmore. According to multiple witnesses, Miss Whitmore orchestrated an elaborate scheme to entrap the Duke, including a staged encounter at the Ashford Ball and the strategic placement of a wounded bird to appeal to His Grace's known compassion for animals. She planned the whole thing, claims one family member who spoke on condition of anonymity. She knew the Duke would be at that ball. She deliberately retreated to the conservatory and planted the bird there herself. It was all a performance designed to manipulate him. Further investigation reveals Miss Whitmore's desperate circumstances, cast out by her family for improper conduct, living beyond her means, in debt to multiple merchants. The Duke's generous financial support, including the establishment of a private residence and the provision of expensive clothing and jewels, raises questions about the true nature of their arrangement. It's obvious what she is, states another source. A woman of her age and situation doesn't attract a duke through virtue. She used the only currency she had left. The paper went on, each paragraph worse than the last. It painted Clara as a scheming opportunist, a desperate woman who'd seduced a naive duke through manipulation and lies. It suggested she was pregnant. It implied she was a prostitute. It destroyed her in a dozen different ways with poison disguised as concern. It's Thomas, Clara said faintly. He wrote this, or paid someone to. His handwriting is all over it. Adrian's voice came from the doorway. He looked like he'd been awake all night, jaw dark with stubble, eyes hard as granite. Every anonymous source is someone from your family. The pregnant rumor came from your aunt. The debt claims came from your sister. They're lying. Clara's voice shook. All of it. The bird was already there. I didn't plant it. I didn't plan anything. I know. He crossed to her, took the paper from her trembling hands. Everyone who matters knows. But that's not the point. Then what is the point? The point is Thomas just declared total war. Adrian crumpled the paper in his fist. He's not trying to buy you off anymore. He's trying to destroy you so completely that even if I still want you, society won't let me have you. Will they? Let you have me? Adrian's silence was answer enough. Clara stood on shaking legs. Then we end this. Now, before it gets worse. I'll issue a statement saying the courtship was a mistake, that I'm withdrawing, that you were nothing but kind and I misunderstood. No. Adrian, they're calling me a whore in print. They're saying I trapped you, manipulated you, sold myself to you. If we don't stop this now, if we stop now, they win. He caught her shoulders. Don't you see? This is exactly what Thomas wants. He pushes until you break, until you run, until you prove you were never strong enough to stand beside me in the first place. Maybe I'm not. The words hung between them like broken glass. Clara pulled away, wrapped her arms around herself. Look at me, Adrian. Really look. I'm 32, plain, poor. I have no family, no connections, no prospects. And now I have no reputation either. What kind of duchess would I make? What kind of wife? I'd be a liability, a scandal, a constant source of the woman I love. The world stopped. Clara's breath caught. What? I love you. Adrian said it simply, like he was stating a fact. I didn't plan to, didn't expect it. But somewhere between watching you save that bird and watching you stand up to your family and watching you refuse to break under pressure that would shatter most people, I fell in love with you. Tears burned Clara's eyes. You can't. Too late. I'll ruin you. Then we'll be ruined together. He stepped closer, wiped her tears with his thumbs. I don't want perfect, Clara. I don't want proper. I want you, angry and frightened and brave enough to slap your sister. I want you beside me when I face down boardrooms and parliaments and every person who thinks they can tell me who to love. They'll never accept me. I don't need them to accept you. I need you to accept yourself. His voice was rough. I need you to believe you're worth fighting for, because I can fight them all day. But if you don't believe it too, we've already lost. Clara looked at this man who'd somehow seen through years of invisibility to the person underneath, who'd chosen her again and again when the world said he shouldn't, who was standing here offering her everything when she had nothing to offer in return except herself. I don't know how, she whispered. How to believe I'm worth it. Then let me show you. Adrian pulled her close, and she let herself lean into his strength. Let me prove it every day, until you believe it too. Clara buried her face in his chest and felt something inside her crack open. Not break, transform, like a bird finally realizing its wings could work. I love you too, she said against his shirt. I think I have since you first looked at me like I was worth looking at. His arms tightened. Then marry me. Clara's head snapped up. What? Marry me. Not next month or next year, now, today. Let's go to a church and make it official before they can tear us apart. His eyes were fierce. I want them to know that every word in that scandal sheet just made me more certain that I'm choosing you permanently, publicly, irrevocably. Adrian, that's insane. Yes or no, Clara? Her heart was a wild thing in her chest. This was madness. This was social suicide. This was everything she'd been taught to fear, and it was the only thing she'd ever really wanted. Yes, she heard herself say. Yes, I'll marry you. Adrian's smile was fierce and triumphant. He kissed her hard, possessive, claiming her in a way that left no room for doubt. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. Get dressed. Something simple. We're going to that church on Baker Street. The vicar there owes me a favor. Pemberton can act as witness. What about everything else? We'll handle it after. He was already moving toward the door. Right now, we're going to do the one thing Thomas can't undo. We're going to become unbreakable. Clara stood in the center of her room, heart racing, hands finally steady. This was it, the point of no return. After this, there would be no going back, no second chances, no escape if it all went wrong. But there would be Adrian and love, and a choice that was entirely her own. She rang for Mrs. Davies and started getting dressed. They were married in 30 minutes. The church was small, dark wood and stained glass that caught the afternoon light. The vicar performed the ceremony with quiet dignity, asking no questions about the hasty arrangement or the bride's lack of family. Pemberton stood as witness, his face professionally blank even as his hands shook signing the register. When it was done, when Adrian slipped a simple gold band on her finger and kissed her like he was sealing a promise, Clara felt the world shift beneath her feet. She was married. She was a duchess. The church doors slammed open. Thomas stood in the entrance, flanked by 2 constables and a man in formal legal robes. "Stop this ceremony," Thomas commanded. "I'm here to prevent a fraud." Adrian stepped in front of Clara, his body a shield. "You're too late, Whitmore. We're already married." Under false pretenses. Thomas moved down the aisle, the constables following. "I have evidence that Miss Whitmore obtained this marriage through deception and coercion. I'm here to have it annulled." "On what grounds?" the vicar sputtered. "This is highly irregular. On the grounds that she's mentally unfit." Thomas pulled papers from his coat. "I have signed statements from 3 physicians attesting to Clara's unstable mental state. She suffered from delusions and episodes of hysteria for years. My family has tried to care for her, but she's refused treatment. And now she's manipulated the Duke of Northridge into marriage while in the grip of one of her episodes." The words hit like bullets. Clara felt Adrian go rigid beside her, felt the room start to spin. "That's a lie," she managed. I don't. You assaulted your sister 2 nights ago, slapped her without provocation." Thomas's voice was gentle, pitying, devastating. "You've been living in the Duke's home unchaperoned, engaging in inappropriate behavior. You've been making wild accusations against your family. These are not the actions of a sound mind, Clara." "She's perfectly sound." Adrian's voice was lethal. "And you're about to learn what happens when you threaten my wife." "Your wife?" Thomas smiled. "I don't think so. Not for long." He nodded to the constables. "Take her into protective custody. She needs to be evaluated by proper medical authorities before any marriage can be considered valid." The constables moved forward. Adrian's hand went to his belt, and Clara realized with shock that he was carrying a pistol. "Touch her," he said quietly, "and I'll shoot you where you stand." The church went silent. "Your Grace." The legal official stepped forward carefully. "Please be reasonable. We're simply following the law." "If Miss Whitmore—" "Duchess Northridge," Adrian corrected. "If the Duchess is indeed of sound mind, a proper evaluation will confirm it. If she's not, then she needs help. Threatening violence doesn't resolve anything." "He's right," Clara said quietly. Her voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "Adrian, put the gun down." "No." His hand didn't waver. "I'm not letting them take you. If you shoot them, you'll hang. And then what?" Clara stepped around him, faced her brother directly. "You've been planning this, all of it. The scandal sheet, the doctors, the timing. You knew we'd react by getting married quickly, and you waited until the ceremony was complete so you could claim I was too unstable to consent." Thomas's smile confirmed everything. "You're proving my point, sister. These paranoid accusations aren't paranoid if they're true." Clara's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "You want me evaluated? Fine. But not by doctors you've paid off. I want an independent physician, someone chosen by this court, not by you." "Clara, no." Adrian lowered the pistol but didn't put it away. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." She looked at him, and something in her eyes made him step back. "Because if we fight this with violence, we lose. But if I prove I'm sound, if I let them test me and question me and examine me, and I come through it intact, then we've won. Completely. Forever." "And if you don't?" Thomas asked softly. "If the evaluation confirms what we all know, that you're damaged, unstable, unfit to make such decisions, then you get what you wanted." Clara lifted her chin. "But you won't. Because I'm not insane, Thomas. I'm angry. There's a difference." She turned to the legal official. "I'll submit to evaluation, but I have conditions. Independent physician, evaluated in Adrian's home, not an asylum. And the results made public, so there can be no question." The official looked between her and Thomas. "That's highly unusual, but acceptable. I'll make the arrangements." "No." Adrian grabbed Clara's arm. "I won't let you do this. They'll twist whatever you say. They'll find some way to declare you unfit. have already lost. Clara cupped his face, forced him to look at her. Don't you see? They're desperate. This is their final move. And when I prove them wrong, when I show the world I'm exactly who you see, they'll have nothing left. And if you're wrong, then I was wrong about everything. She kissed him, soft and fierce. But I'm not. For the first time in my life, I know exactly who I am, and no doctor they bring in can tell me different. Adrian's eyes were anguished, but he let her go. Clara turned back to Thomas and saw fear flicker across his face. He'd expected her to break, to run, to prove his case by falling apart. Instead, she stood straight and met his gaze without flinching. When do we start? She asked the official. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I'll have the physician there. Then I'll see you tomorrow. Clara took Adrian's hand. Come on, let's go home. They walked out of the church together while Thomas stood frozen in the aisle, his perfect trap turned uncertain. Outside, Adrian pulled her into the carriage and held her like she might disappear. You're braver than anyone I've ever known, he said into her hair. I'm terrified, Clara admitted. But I'm done running from fear. The carriage pulled away, and Clara watched the church recede through the window. Tomorrow, they would try to break her, try to prove she was everything they'd always said, weak, damaged, unfit. But tonight, she was a duchess, and tomorrow she would prove she'd earned it. The physician arrived at exactly 9 o'clock with 3 leather cases and an expression like he was entering a madhouse. Clara watched from the sitting room window as Dr. Edmund Hartley climbed out of his carriage, a man in his late 50s, wire spectacles, the kind of stern face that suggested he didn't suffer fools. Behind him came the legal official from yesterday, and behind him, Thomas. Of course Thomas came. Ready? Adrian stood beside her, his hand finding hers. He hadn't slept. Neither had she. They'd spent the night talking in low voices about what to expect, what to say, how to survive this. No. Clara's throat was tight. But I'm doing it anyway. Mrs. Davies showed them into the formal drawing room, neutral territory, Adrian had insisted. Not the West Wing where Clara lived, not his private study. Somewhere that felt official, removed from their personal life. Dr. Hartley settled into a chair with the air of a man conducting an experiment. The legal official took position by the door. Thomas stood near the window, arms crossed, watching Clara like a hawk watches a rabbit. Mrs. Blackwood, the doctor's voice was clipped, professional. Or do you prefer Duchess Northridge? Clara is fine. She sat across from him, back straight, hands folded. Every instinct screamed at her to curl up, to make herself small, to disappear. She forced herself to stay visible. Very well, Clara. I'm here to conduct a standard mental competency evaluation. I'll ask you a series of questions. Some will seem simple, others more complex. There are no right or wrong answers. I'm simply assessing your capacity to make sound decisions. He pulled papers from his case. Do you understand? Yes. Good. Let's begin. Can you tell me today's date? Wednesday, the 17th of November, 1847. And where are we? The Duke of Northridge's townhouse, Mayfair, London. Who is the current Prime Minister? Lord John Russell. The questions continued, basic at first. Facts, dates, simple arithmetic. Clara answered each one steadily, aware of Thomas's gaze boring into her, aware of Adrian standing near the fireplace like a coiled spring ready to break loose. Then Dr. Hartley shifted tactics. Tell me about your family, Clara. Her stomach clenched. What about them? Your brother has expressed concerns about your mental state. He claims you've suffered from delusions, episodes of hysteria, violent outbursts. In your own words, describe your relationship with your family. Clara breathed slowly. My family has treated me as an embarrassment since I turned 25 and failed to marry. They've mocked me publicly, excluded me from family events, and made it clear my value was measured entirely by my marriageability. When I failed at that, they decided I had no value at all. That sounds rather bitter. That sounds honest. Clara met his eyes. You asked for my words, Doctor. Those are my words. And the violence? Your brother claims you assaulted your sister without provocation. I slapped her, once, after she came to this house at midnight to tell me the Duke would tire of me and I should accept money from Thomas to disappear quietly. Clara's hands tightened in her lap. I'm not proud of it, but I'm also not going to pretend it didn't happen or that she didn't deserve it. Thomas made a sound. The doctor held up a hand without looking at him. You acknowledge violent behavior then? I acknowledge one slap after years of psychological cruelty. If that makes me violent, doctor, then half of London should be in asylums. Psychological cruelty is your perception. Perhaps your family was simply concerned for your welfare. My family told me I was worthless for 12 years. Clara's voice stayed steady even as her heart raced. They called me a failure, a burden, an embarrassment. They mocked me at parties, excluded me from gatherings, and made sure I understood that my continued existence in their lives was an act of charity I should be grateful for. That's not concern, doctor. That's systematic degradation. Or perhaps, Dr. Hartley leaned forward, you've constructed an elaborate narrative to justify your own failings. Many women struggle with spinsterhood. Most don't accuse their families of cruelty. Most families don't treat their unmarried daughters like livestock that failed to sell. Clara, Adrian's voice cut in, warning. She glanced at him and saw tension in every line of his body. She took a breath, steadied herself. I apologize, doctor. I'm aware I sound angry, but anger isn't insanity. It's a rational response to irrational treatment. Dr. Hartley made notes. Clara couldn't read his expression. Let's discuss the Duke. Tell me about your relationship. We met at a ball. He showed me kindness when no one else would. We discovered we enjoyed each other's company. He asked to court me. I accepted. And it didn't strike you as unusual? A duke of his standing courting a woman of your circumstances? Of course it struck me as unusual. I told him it was unusual. I told him he was making a mistake. Clara's throat tightened. But he persisted. And eventually I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was worth more than what my family had decided. Or perhaps you saw an opportunity. Thomas's voice came from the window, sharp and cold. A wealthy man showing interest, a chance to escape your circumstances, a ticket to security and status you could never achieve on your own. Clara turned to face her brother. Yes, Thomas. I saw all of that. I saw a man who could give me everything I'd never had, and I still almost said no. Do you know why? Enlighten me. Because I didn't think I deserved it. Her voice cracked. Because you and Aunt Marjorie and Helen and everyone else spent so many years convincing me I was worthless that I almost believed it. Even when someone saw me differently, even when someone chose me, my first instinct was to assume it was a trick, a joke, another way to hurt me. The room went quiet. So yes, Clara continued, looking back at Dr. Hartley, I had every practical reason to accept Adrian's courtship, but the fact that I almost didn't, the fact that I questioned it, doubted it, fought against it, doesn't that suggest I'm more rational than you're giving me credit for? Dr. Hartley studied her. Perhaps. Or perhaps it suggests you're aware your position is indefensible and you're trying to reframe opportunism as reluctance. Then ask him, Clara gestured to Adrian. Ask him if I seemed opportunistic. Ask him if I threw myself at him or if he had to convince me. The Duke's perception is irrelevant. He's clearly infatuated. My perception is the only thing that matters. Adrian's voice was steel. And I'm telling you, doctor, that Clara resisted this courtship every step. She told me I was making a mistake. She tried to protect me from scandal. She offered to leave when her family started attacking my business interests. The only opportunist in this room is Thomas Whitmore, who's using medical evaluation as a weapon because he failed to control me through financial pressure. That's a serious accusation, Your Grace. It's the truth. Adrian moved to stand behind Clara's chair, one hand on her shoulder. He tried to force me out of our business consortium when I refused to end the courtship. When that failed, he planted stories and scandal sheets. When that failed, he manufactured a mental health crisis to invalidate our marriage. Every move has been calculated to destroy Clara, so I'd have no choice but to give her up. My sister is mentally unstable, Thomas said flatly. Everything else is irrelevant. Then prove it. Clara stood, facing the doctor directly. You've asked about my family, my relationship, my anger. What else do you need? Test my memory, my reasoning, my capacity for rational thought. I'll answer any question you have, but stop treating my anger at legitimate mistreatment as evidence of insanity. Dr. Hartley removed his spectacles, cleaned them slowly. Miss Whitmore? Mrs. Blackwood. Mrs. Blackwood. I've been conducting mental competency evaluations for 20 years. I've seen genuine delusion. I've seen mania, hysteria, and complete detachment from reality. And I've seen countless women labeled as insane for the crime of being inconvenient. He put his spectacles back on. "You are not insane." The words hit like thunder. Thomas went white. "That's impossible. The symptoms are symptoms of a woman who's been systematically abused by her family and is now fighting back." Dr. Hartley stood, gathering his papers. "Her memory is excellent. Her reasoning is sound. Her emotional responses are appropriate to her circumstances. The only evidence of instability I've seen is the rage she's clearly been suppressing for years. And frankly, given what she's described, that rage seems remarkably controlled." "You can't—" Thomas's voice climbed. "She assaulted her sister. She's living with a man unchaperoned. She slapped someone who tried to bribe her into betraying her husband. She's living in her husband's home because her family cast her out. And she married a man who values her when no one else would." Dr. Hartley's voice was sharp. "None of that is insanity, Mr. Whitmore. That's survival." Clara's knees went weak. Adrian's hand tightened on her shoulder, holding her up. "My report will state that Mrs. Blackwood is of sound mind and fully capable of making her own decisions, including the decision to marry." The doctor looked at the legal official. "The marriage is valid. Any attempt to annul it on grounds of mental incompetence will fail." Thomas's face twisted. "You're wrong. She's manipulated you just like she manipulated him. I'm done here." "Doctor," Hartley picked up his cases. "Mr. Whitmore, I suggest you accept that your sister has made a choice you don't approve of and move on with your life. This vendetta is becoming unseemly." He left without waiting for a response. The legal official cleared his throat. "I'll file the necessary paperwork. The marriage stands. My congratulations, Your Grace. Mrs. Blackwood." He nodded to both of them and followed the doctor out. Clara and Adrian and Thomas stood in the drawing room in heavy silence. "This isn't over," Thomas finally said. His voice was low, dangerous. "You think you've won. You've humiliated our family, destroyed our reputation, made us look like fools across London society. And for what? A woman who'll bore you within a year?" "Get out of my house," Adrian said quietly. "You've made an enemy, Blackwood. I'll spend every day for the rest of my life making you regret this choice. Your business deals will collapse. Your social standing will crumble. And when it does, when you finally see what she really is, you'll have no one to blame but yourself." "I said get out." Thomas looked at Clara one last time. "I hope he's worth it, sister, because you've lost everything else." "I never had anything to lose," Clara replied. "You made sure of that." He left, the door slamming behind him like a gunshot. The moment he was gone, Clara's legs gave out completely. Adrian caught her, lowered her into the chair, knelt in front of her. "You did it," he said, his voice rough with something that might have been tears. "You stood there and faced him down and proved every word he said was a lie." "He's right, though," Clara's hands were shaking again, "about making enemies, about the consequences. He won't stop, Adrian. He'll keep coming after us." "Let him." Adrian cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "Let him spend every day trying to destroy us. We'll spend every day building something he can't tear down. You and me. Together. Unbreakable." Clara kissed him, desperate and grateful and still terrified, but also, for the first time, sure. Sure that she'd made the right choice. Sure that she was worth fighting for. Sure that the woman who'd been invisible for so long was finally, undeniably, real. The news of Dr. Hartley's evaluation spread through London like wildfire. Clara watched it happen from inside Adrian's townhouse. Now her townhouse, she had to keep reminding herself. Through visitors and letters, and the suddenly frantic activity of people who'd ignored her for years, suddenly desperate to meet the woman who'd survived Thomas Whitmore's attack. "Lady Pemberton is here," Mrs. Davies announced on the third day. "She's brought half the Women's Charitable Society with her. Says they want to welcome you properly." Clara looked at Adrian, who was working through correspondence at his desk. "Should I receive them?" "That's your decision." He didn't look up from his papers. "But if you do, make them work for it. You don't owe them anything." Lady Pemberton turned out to be a formidable woman in her 60s, iron-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She swept into the drawing room with 6 other women, all of them watching Clara with expressions ranging from curiosity to grudging respect. "Mrs. Blackwood," Lady Pemberton's voice was crisp. "Thank you for receiving us. I'll be direct. We were wrong about you." Clara blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "We were wrong. We heard the gossip. We saw your brother's campaign against you. And most of us assumed there must be some truth to it, that you were, well," she waved a hand, "what they said you were. But Dr. Hartley is a man of impeccable reputation. If he says you're sound, then you're sound, and that means we owe you an apology." "An apology?" Clara's voice came out flat. "For our assumptions. Our failure to defend you when the scandal sheets attacked. Our—" Lady Pemberton's mouth tightened. "Our complicity in your brother's cruelty. We should have questioned his narrative. We didn't. We're sorry." The other women murmured agreement, though Clara noticed their eyes were sharp, still assessing. "Why are you really here?" Clara asked. "Because I don't think you came all this way just to apologize." Lady Pemberton smiled, and it was almost approving. "You're right. We came because you've done something remarkable. You stood up to your family. You married a duke despite every obstacle they threw at you, and you survived a competency evaluation designed to destroy you. That takes courage, and intelligence, and a backbone most society women don't have. So you want to befriend me now that I've proven myself useful? We want to offer you membership in our charitable society. We support women's education. We fund hospitals. We push for legal reforms that protect married women's property rights." Lady Pemberton leaned forward. "And we could use someone with your particular experience. My experience being humiliated and cast out? Your experience surviving it." Another woman spoke up, Mrs. Hartford, according to her introduction. "Most women in your position would have broken, gone quietly, accepted whatever scraps were offered. You didn't. You fought, and you won. That's the kind of strength we need." Clara looked at these women, wealthy, powerful, everything she'd thought she could never be, offering her a place at their table. "What's the catch?" she asked. Lady Pemberton laughed. "The catch is that if you join us, you become a target for every man who thinks women should stay silent and grateful. You'll face opposition, mockery, possibly legal challenges. The Duke of Northridge's wife advocating for women's rights? It will cause a scandal." "Another scandal," Clara corrected. "I'm already scandalous." "Exactly, which means you have nothing left to lose and everything to gain." Lady Pemberton stood. "Think about it. We meet every Tuesday at 3. You'd be welcome." They left, and Clara sat in the drawing room feeling like she'd just been offered entry into a world she didn't know existed. Adrian appeared in the doorway. "What did they want?" "To recruit me." Clara turned to face him. "They want me to join their society, work on charitable causes, advocate for women's rights." "Do you want to?" Did she? A week ago, Clara would have said no, would have assumed she had nothing to offer, no right to speak, no value beyond being grateful for whatever she was given. But she wasn't that woman anymore. "Yes," she said. "I think I do." Adrian's smile was fierce and proud. "Then do it. Show them what happens when you give a woman who's been silenced a platform to speak." The first Tuesday meeting was terrifying. Clara walked into Lady Pemberton's drawing room to find 30 women, all wealthy, all educated, all staring at her like she was an exotic animal escaped from the zoo. "Ladies," Lady Pemberton's voice cut through the whispers. "Our newest member, Mrs. Clara Blackwood, Duchess of Northridge." Clara stood at the front of the room, heart pounding, and forced herself to speak. "I don't know what I'm doing here," she started, and several women laughed. "I'm serious. A month ago I was invisible. A failure. The woman everyone pitied and no one respected. And now I'm standing in front of you, married to a duke, being asked to contribute to causes I barely understand." "Then why come?" someone called from the back. "Because I spent 32 years being told I had nothing to offer, and I think—" Clara's voice strengthened. "I think that was a lie. I think every woman in this room has been told some version of that lie. That we're too emotional, too irrational, too weak to handle serious matters. And I think the only way to prove it's a lie is to do exactly what we're doing now. Gather, organize, speak." The room had gone quiet. I can't write laws or manage hospitals or fund schools, Clara continued, but I can tell you what it's like to be dismissed and degraded and destroyed for not fitting society's idea of what a woman should be. And I can tell you that if women like me, women society has already written off, can survive and fight back, then maybe we're stronger than anyone wants to admit. She sat down, hands shaking, certain she'd said too much, or not enough, or the wrong thing entirely. The applause started slowly, then built until the whole room was clapping. Lady Pemberton leaned over. "Welcome to the society, Mrs. Blackwood. I think you're going to fit in perfectly." But Thomas's next attack came through the papers. Duchess's radical affiliations. Northridge wife joins notorious women's society. The Duke of Northridge's controversial bride has aligned herself with Lady Pemberton's Society for Women's Advancement, a group known for its radical views on female education and property rights. Society insiders worry that the Duchess's influence may pull the Duke toward dangerous political positions that threaten the natural order. Clara read it over breakfast while Adrian fumed beside her. "They're trying to make you toxic," he said. "Associate you with radical politics, so I have to choose between you and my political standing." "Will you?" Clara set down the paper. "Have to choose?" "No, because I agree with them." Adrian's smile was sharp. "Women should control their own property, should have access to education, should be allowed to speak in public without being labeled hysterical. And if Parliament doesn't like it, they can find another duke to push around. You'll lose allies. I'll gain better ones." He stood, kissed the top of her head. "I have a meeting with the Prime Minister this afternoon about trade policy. Want to bet he brings up your radical affiliations?" "What will you say?" "That my wife is smarter than half his cabinet, and he should listen to her instead of trying to silence her." Clara laughed. The sound startled out of her. "You're going to get us both exiled. Then we'll be exiled together." Adrian headed for the door, then paused. "There's something else. I received a letter this morning from your cousin Beatrice." Clara's stomach clenched. "What does she want?" "To apologize, apparently. She's asking to call on you this afternoon." He watched her carefully. "I can refuse if you want." Clara thought about the 17-year-old who'd mocked her at the Ashford ball, who'd thrown champagne and laughed while Clara absorbed the humiliation. "No," she said slowly. "Let her come. I'm curious what she has to say." Beatrice arrived at 3, dressed in pale pink and looking nervous. Mrs. Davies showed her into the sitting room where Clara waited, and the girl froze in the doorway like she'd walked into a trap. "Miss Beatrice Whitmore," Mrs. Davies announced, her voice carefully neutral. "Thank you, Mrs. Davies." "Tea, please." Clara gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down, Beatrice. You're making the furniture nervous." The girl sat, hands twisted in her lap. Up close, she looked younger than Clara remembered. Scared. "Thank you for seeing me," Beatrice said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't." Clara poured tea with steady hands. When had they stopped shaking? And passed a cup across. "What do you want?" "To apologize for what I said at the ball, for—" Beatrice's voice cracked. "For being cruel, for laughing at you, for all of it." "Why now? Because I married a duke and suddenly I'm worth apologizing to." "Because I'm afraid I'm going to become you." The words hung in the air like smoke. Clara set down her teacup. "Explain." "I'm 17, still young enough to be marketable. But there are rumors already that I'm too outspoken, too independent, too much like my mother." Beatrice's hand shook. "Father's already warning me to be more careful, more proper, more like the daughters who get good marriages. And I realized," her eyes met Clara's, "that if I don't marry well, if I don't fit their perfect image, they'll do to me exactly what they did to you. They'll decide I'm worthless and treat me accordingly." "So you're apologizing out of self-interest." "I'm apologizing because I was wrong." Beatrice's voice strengthened. "I watched them destroy you for years. Watched Mother mock you. Watched Uncle Thomas treat you like garbage. Watched everyone laugh like it was entertainment. And I joined in because it was easier than defending you. Because I thought if I was cruel to you, they'd never be cruel to me. And now you realize that's not how it works. Now I realize they'll turn on anyone who doesn't serve their purposes. And I don't want to be the next cautionary tale." Beatrice leaned forward. "How did you survive it? How did you stand there and let them tear you apart and not break?" Clara thought about that, about the years of quiet endurance, the nights crying into her pillow, the desperate hope that if she just stayed small enough, they'd forget she existed. I didn't survive it, she said honestly. I endured it. There's a difference. Surviving means you come through intact. I came through broken, and I stayed broken until someone saw me differently and gave me permission to see myself that way too. The Duke. Adrian. Yes. Clara's throat tightened. But here's what I learned. Waiting for someone to save you is another kind of prison. You have to decide you're worth saving first. You have to believe it even when every voice around you says otherwise. How? Beatrice's voice was almost desperate. How do you believe something no one else believes? You find one small thing that's true and you hold on to it. Clara thought about the bird in the conservatory, about choosing compassion when everyone else chose cruelty. For me, it was knowing that even if they were right about everything else, they were wrong about me being worthless. I might be poor and plain and unmarriageable, but I wasn't cruel. I wasn't empty. I wasn't the monster they tried to make me. Beatrice wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm sorry for all of it. I know saying it doesn't fix anything, but it's a start. Clara stood. You're 17. You have time to decide what kind of woman you're going to be. You can be like your mother, beautiful and cruel and hollow, or you can be different. The choice is yours. Will you help me? If I need it? Clara looked at this girl who'd mocked her, who'd been part of the chorus telling her she was worthless. Part of her wanted to refuse, to let Beatrice face the same isolation she'd faced, alone and unsupported. But that wasn't who she wanted to be anymore. Yes, Clara said. If you're serious about changing, if you're willing to do the work, then yes, I'll help you. Beatrice stood, moved like she might hug Clara, then thought better of it. Thank you. I know I don't deserve it, but thank you. After she left, Adrian emerged from his study. You heard? Every word. Mrs. Davies has excellent timing with her tea deliveries. He leaned against the doorframe. You're going to help her? I think so. Maybe. If she's genuine. Even after everything she did to you? Especially because of that. Clara moved to stand beside him. Because if I help her, I prove they didn't win. They didn't turn me into someone as cruel as them. And maybe, just maybe, I can keep them from doing to her what they did to me. Adrian pulled her close, and Clara let herself lean into his strength. You're remarkable, he said into her hair. You know that? I'm learning. Clara smiled against his chest. Slowly, but I'm learning. The turning point came at Parliament. Adrian had a seat in the House of Lords, and he'd been using it increasingly to push for trade reforms that would benefit working-class families. Clara had never attended. Wives didn't, generally. But when he asked if she wanted to come watch from the gallery, she said yes. The gallery was full of women in expensive dresses, all of them watching their husbands perform politics like theater. Clara took her seat and felt their stares like brands on her skin. Below, Adrian stood to speak. My lords, I rise to support the motion for expanded property rights for married women. The current laws, which grant husbands total control over their wives' assets, are outdated and unjust. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Clara watched as men shifted uncomfortably, as some began whispering. The Duke of Northridge has clearly been influenced by his radical wife, someone called out, Lord Ashford, the host of the ball where this had all started. Perhaps his opinions on women's rights should be taken with appropriate skepticism. Adrian's smile was cold. My opinions on women's rights are based on witnessing firsthand the damage our current system does. My wife was denied any inheritance when her father died. Her brother controls everything that should rightfully be hers. She had no legal recourse, no financial independence, no way to escape a family that treated her with systematic cruelty. And she is not unique. Across England, women are trapped in similar circumstances because our laws assume they're incapable of managing their own affairs. Women are incapable, Lord Ashford started. My wife, Adrian cut him off, survived a deliberate campaign to have her declared insane so her family could annul our marriage and control my fortune. She stood before a physician and proved her complete competence while her brother tried everything to discredit her. She's currently working with Lady Pemberton's Society on charitable initiatives that feed more families than most of you have ever met. And she does it all while facing constant attacks on her character, her intelligence, her worth. His voice hardened. So when you tell me women are incapable, Lord Ashford, I hear you telling me that you're threatened by capable women, and that's a problem with you, not them. The gallery exploded in whispers. Clara sat frozen, heart pounding. Adrian wasn't done. I move that we establish a committee to review current property laws with an eye toward reform. Women deserve the right to own property, control their inheritances, and make financial decisions without male oversight. And any lord who votes against this motion should ask himself if he's protecting justice or protecting his own power. He sat down to absolute chaos. Some lords applauded, others shouted objections. The speaker called for order repeatedly. When the vote came, the motion passed by 3 votes. 3 votes. It wasn't full reform. It wasn't immediate change. But it was movement, progress, acknowledgement that the current system was broken. And Adrian had done it by using Clara's story as proof. She met him outside the chamber afterward, and the look on his face, pride and fury and fierce joy all mixed together, took her breath away. You used me, she said. Not accusatory, awed. I used our truth. He caught her hand. They want to make you the villain? Fine. Let's make them face what they've done to their villain. Let's make them admit that their system breaks people. And then let's watch them squirm while they try to justify it. Clara kissed him right there in the corridor. Propriety be damned. Let the lords and ladies stare. Let them whisper. Let them know that the invisible woman had become impossible to ignore. That night, every major paper ran the story. Some praised Adrian's courage. Some called him a traitor to his class. But all of them acknowledged Clara, not as the scandal, not as the opportunist, but as the woman whose experience had moved a duke to challenge Parliament itself. She was finally, undeniably visible, and the world was starting to realize she'd been worth seeing all along. The letters started arriving 3 days after Adrian's speech in Parliament, hundreds of them, some addressed to Adrian, most addressed to Clara, women she'd never met pouring out stories that echoed her own, families who'd discarded them, husbands who'd stolen their inheritances, systems that had ground them into dust and expected gratitude for the privilege. Clara sat in the study surrounded by paper, reading each one while tears streamed down her face. Listen to this, she said to Adrian, who was reviewing contracts nearby. My father died when I was 20. My brother inherited everything. I'm 35 now, living on his charity, and he reminds me daily that I'm a burden. Your story gave me hope that maybe I don't have to accept this forever. She's in Yorkshire. She's never even met me, and Her voice broke. Adrian came to kneel beside her chair, took the letter from her shaking hands. You've given them something they didn't have before. What? I haven't done anything. I just survived. You survived publicly. You refused to hide. And now they see that survival is possible. He gestured at the stacks of letters. Every woman who writes to you is one more person realizing she's not alone. That's not nothing, Clara. That's revolution. It's just letters. It starts with letters, then it becomes movements, change, real change. Adrian stood, pulled her up with him. Lady Pemberton wants to organize a public forum, women sharing their stories. She wants you to speak. Clara's stomach dropped. I can't speak in front of crowds. You spoke in front of 30 society women and made half of them cry. You can do this. That was different. That was smaller, safer. Adrian caught her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. You've been invisible for 32 years. Now you're the most talked about woman in London. You can either use that platform or let it use you, your choice. Clara looked at the letters, at the desperate hope in every line, at women who were drowning and grabbing for the rope she'd somehow thrown them. When's the forum? She asked. Adrian's smile was fierce. Next Wednesday, 7 o'clock, the Assembly Hall on Market Street. Lady Pemberton expects 300 attendees. 300. Clara's knees went weak. I'm going to vomit. Do it after you speak. The speech is more important. Thomas made his final move on Monday. Clara was working with Mrs. Davies on household accounts. She was learning to manage the estate, slowly and with frequent mistakes, when Pemberton arrived looking like death. Your Grace, we have a problem. Adrian appeared from his study, took one look at the solicitor's face, and poured whiskey. How bad? Your brother-in-law has filed suit. He's claiming that your marriage to Mrs. Blackwood was contracted under duress and undue influence. He's arguing that you coerced her into marriage while she was in a vulnerable mental state, and that the entire courtship was designed to gain control of whatever inheritance she might eventually receive from the Whitmore estate. Clara laughed, actually laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. What inheritance? Thomas controls everything. There's nothing for Adrian to gain. That's not how he's framing it. He's claiming there are disputed assets from your father's death that should rightfully be yours, and that the Duke married you to access them. Pemberton set down papers. It's absurd, but it's public, and it's forcing another competency evaluation, this one focused specifically on whether you were capable of consenting to marriage. We already did this. Dr. Hartley cleared me. Thomas is arguing that Dr. Hartley was biased, that the evaluation was compromised because it took place in the Duke's home. He wants a court-appointed physician, multiple sessions, full testimony from family members about your history. Adrian's hand slammed down on the desk hard enough to rattle the inkwell. He's trying to destroy her credibility before the forum. Make it look like everything she says is the delusion of an unstable woman. That would be my assessment, yes. Can we fight it? Clara asked. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. We can. But it will be ugly, public. Every detail of your life will be examined. Every childhood incident, every moment of sadness or anger or struggle, they'll twist it all into evidence of instability. Pemberton looked genuinely pained. Mrs. Blackwood, I've seen cases like this. The system is designed to protect men's interests. They can drag this out for years if they want. And even if you win, the damage to your reputation will be exactly what Thomas wants. Clara stood. He doesn't care if he wins legally. He cares about making me too toxic to be useful. If I'm under court evaluation, no one will take me seriously at the forum. No one will believe the women's stories. We'll all just be hysterical females making unfounded accusations. Probably true, Pemberton admitted. Clara looked at Adrian. What do you want me to do? What do you want to do? The question hung between them. Clara thought about running, about withdrawing, about making herself invisible again to escape the scrutiny. Then she thought about the letters, about the 300 women planning to attend Wednesday's forum, about Beatrice, terrified of becoming what Clara had been. I want to fight, she said quietly, but I need to know it won't destroy you. Your business, your political standing, everything you've built. Adrian crossed to her, took her hands. Everything I've built means nothing if I can't use it to protect what matters. And you matter more than all of it combined. That's not rational. Love isn't rational. He kissed her forehead. Fight. Speak at the forum. Force Thomas to face you in court. And we'll prove once and for all that the only person who's delusional is the man who thought he could break you. Clara turned to Pemberton. Tell the court we accept the evaluation. But we have conditions. The physician must be chosen by an independent medical board, not Thomas's lawyers. The sessions will be documented by a court reporter, and Thomas has to submit to the same evaluation. Pemberton blinked. I'm sorry? If he's claiming I'm unstable, he needs to prove he's stable enough to make that judgment. Fair is fair. Clara's voice was steady now. Either we both get evaluated, or the suit gets dismissed. That's, Pemberton stopped, started to smile. That's brilliant. He'll never agree to it. Then he withdraws the suit. Either way, we win. Adrian was staring at her like she'd just conquered nations. When did you get so strategic? I learned from watching you. Clara squeezed his hands. Now let's go remind my brother what happens when he picks fights with people who have nothing left to lose. Thomas refused the evaluation, as predicted. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen too many men use the courts to control women, dismissed the suit with prejudice and issued a formal reprimand for frivolous litigation. The victory made every paper. Whitmore suit dismissed. Judge rules Duchess competent. In a stunning rebuke, Judge Margaret Ashworth dismissed Thomas Whitmore's suit against his sister Clara Blackwood, Duchess of Northridge. The judge's ruling stated that Mr. Whitmore's refusal to submit to his own competency evaluation while demanding one for his sister demonstrated a clear attempt to weaponize medical evaluation for personal gain rather than legitimate concern for mental health. The court finds Mrs. Blackwood to be of sound mind and fully capable of managing her own affairs, Judge Ashworth wrote. Her brother's persistent attempts to prove otherwise speak more to his character than hers. Clara read it 3 times to make sure it was real. It's over, she said wonderingly. He lost. Publicly. Definitively. Not quite over. Adrian looked up from his own paper. He could appeal. He won't. This ruling makes him look petty and controlling. If he appeals, he just proves the judge right. Clara set down the paper. He's done. He has to be. She was wrong. Well, the assembly hall was packed when Clara arrived Wednesday evening. Not 300 women, closer to 500, overflowing into the aisles and crowding the doorways. Lady Pemberton met her at the entrance, eyes bright with something that looked like triumph. Half of them are here because they read about you. The other half came because their husbands forbade it. She squeezed Clara's arm. Ready to make history? Ready to vomit, mostly. Close enough. Lady Pemberton guided her through the crowd to a raised platform at the front. 6 chairs arranged in a row, each for a different speaker. Clara's was center. The other women were already seated. A widow whose son had stolen her inheritance, a wife whose husband beat her but controlled all her money so she couldn't leave, a governess fired for refusing her employer's advances. Each had a story. Each had survived. Clara took her seat and looked out at the sea of faces. Women of all ages, all circumstances, all watching her with desperate hope. She was going to pass out. She was going to... The back door slammed open. Thomas strode in with a dozen men, constables from their uniforms. Behind them, a crowd of angry men who looked like they'd been drinking. This assembly is illegal, Thomas announced, his voice carrying across the hall. Women are not permitted to gather in public venues for political purposes without male supervision. I'm here to shut this down before you all get arrested. The hall erupted, women shouting, men shouting back. Lady Pemberton on her feet demanding to see the statute. Clara stood slowly, and something in her movement cut through the chaos. You're wrong, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. The statute you're referencing applies to political parties and voting organizations. This is a charitable society discussing property law. Entirely legal. You're discussing property law to undermine the legal structure that protects families. We're discussing property law that allows men like you to control women like me. Clara stepped to the edge of the platform. You stole my inheritance. You treated me like garbage for 12 years. You tried to have me declared insane. You tried to annul my marriage. And when all of that failed, you filed a lawsuit you knew you'd lose just to damage my credibility. I was trying to protect you from making a catastrophic mistake. You were trying to protect your control over money that was never yours. Clara's voice finally rose, filling the hall. My father left me 10,000 pounds. You told me it went to settle debts. But I found the records, Thomas. I had Pemberton pull the estate documents. The debts were 3,000 pounds. You kept 7,000 for yourself and convinced me I should be grateful you let me live in your house. The room went silent till Thomas's face drained of color. That's a lie. It's documented fact, filed with the probate court, public record. Clara pulled papers from her reticule. She'd brought them on purpose, knowing he might show up. You committed fraud, Thomas, and you've been using that stolen money to fund your lifestyle while telling me I was a burden. You can't prove. I have the bank records, the probate filings, Pemberton's legal analysis. Clara's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. And I'm prepared to file criminal charges unless you do 3 things. First, you return the 7,000 pounds you stole. Second, you issue a public apology admitting you lied about my mental state and my circumstances. Third, you leave me alone. Forever. Thomas stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You're bluffing. Try me. Clara descended from the platform, walked toward him. Every woman in the hall seemed to be holding her breath. You taught me something valuable, Thomas. You taught me that people will abuse you as long as you let them. As long as you stay quiet and accept it. But the moment you stand up, the moment you fight back, they crumble. Because bullies are cowards. And you're the biggest coward I've ever met. She stopped 3 feet from him, close enough to see the fury and fear warring in his eyes. So what's it going to be? She asked quietly. Give me what I'm owed and walk away with your freedom intact, or refuse and spend the next year explaining to a judge why you committed fraud against your own sister? Thomas's jaw worked. His hands clenched into fists. For a moment, Clara thought he might actually hit her. Then he turned and walked out, the constables following uncertainly, the drunk men trailing behind like sheep who'd lost their leader. The hall exploded in applause. Clara stood frozen, hardly believing what had just happened. She'd faced him down, called his bluff, won. Lady Pemberton appeared at her elbow. "That was the most magnificent thing I've ever witnessed. Now get back up there and give your speech before I die from the suspense." Clara's speech was a disaster. She stammered. She lost her place twice. She cried in the middle and had to stop to collect herself. But she told her story, all of it. The years of mockery, the systematic degradation, the moment in the conservatory when Adrian had seen her differently and given her permission to see herself that way too. "I was invisible for 32 years, she finished, voice hoarse. "And I'm still learning how to be seen, how to believe I matter, how to fight for myself instead of just enduring." She looked out at the crowd. "But if I can do it, if I can go from being the family embarrassment to standing here demanding my rights, then so can you, all of you. We've been told we're too weak, too emotional, too irrational to handle our own lives. But we've survived systems designed to break us. We've endured cruelty that would destroy most men. And we're still here, still fighting, still refusing to disappear." The applause was deafening. Women lined up afterward to thank her, to share their own stories, to ask how to find lawyers like Pemberton, how to access probate records, how to fight back against brothers and fathers and husbands who thought they owned them. Clara answered every question she could, made notes of the ones she couldn't, promised to help however possible. By the time the hall emptied, it was past midnight. Clara's voice was gone, her feet ached, and she was exhausted in a way that felt like victory. Adrian was waiting outside with the carriage. "How did it go?" he asked, though he must have seen the crowds pouring out, must have heard the noise. "I think I started something I can't stop," Clara said wonderingly. "And I think I'm all right with that." He pulled her close, and she melted into him. "Proud of you doesn't begin to cover it. I couldn't have done any of this without you." "You could have. You just didn't know it yet." He kissed the top of her head. "Come on. Let's go home." Boom. The money arrived 6 weeks later. £7,000, transferred into an account Pemberton had established in Clara's name alone. No note, no apology. Just the money Thomas had stolen, returned. Clara stared at the bank statement, still hardly believing it was real. "What will you do with it?" Adrian asked. "I don't know. It's mine. Actually mine. I could—" Clara stopped, started to laugh. "I have no idea. I've never had money that was just mine before. You could invest it. Buy property, start a fund for the Women's Society." Adrian was smiling. "You could do anything." Clara thought about that, about having choices, about being free not just from Thomas's control, but from anyone's control, about being independent in a way she'd never imagined possible. "I want to start a refuge," she said slowly, "for women escaping situations like mine. Women who need somewhere to go when their families cast them out. Somewhere safe until they can figure out what comes next." Adrian's eyes went soft. "That's perfect. It probably won't be enough money. £7,000 sounds like a lot, but property in London. I'll match it. 14,000 total. We can buy a building, staff it properly, make it real." Clara looked at this man who kept choosing her, kept supporting her, kept making the impossible possible. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you keep doing this? Risking everything for me?" "Because you're worth it." He said it simply. "Because watching you transform from invisible to unstoppable is the greatest privilege of my life. Because I love you, and love means building something together that neither of us could build alone." Clara kissed him, deep and grateful and fierce. When they broke apart, she was crying. "We're going to need a name for the refuge," she said. "What about the Whitmore house? Reclaim the name. Make it mean something good." Clara thought about that, about taking the family name that had been a source of shame and turning it into a source of hope. "The Whitmore House for Women," she said. "I like it." The refuge opened 6 months later in a converted townhouse in Bloomsbury. 4 stories, 20 rooms, space for 30 women and their children if needed. Clara hired Mrs. Davies' sister as house mother, staffed it with women who'd been through similar circumstances, and set up partnerships with lawyers willing to help on contingency. The first resident was a woman named Margaret, 42, whose husband had died leaving her penniless because everything had been in his name. She arrived with 2 small children and a carpet bag of belongings, looking terrified. Clara met her at the door. "Welcome," she said. "You're safe here. No one will judge you. No one will make you feel small. And when you're ready to leave, we'll help you figure out where to go next." Margaret burst into tears. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to. Just survive. Just keep fighting. That's thanks enough." Within a month, the refuge was full. Within 3 months, they had a waiting list. Women fleeing abuse, women escaping controlling families, women who'd been cast out for refusing to marry men they didn't love. All of them finding temporary shelter while they rebuilt their lives. Clara visited weekly, bringing supplies, connecting residents with resources, listening to stories that broke her heart, and reminded her why this work mattered. "You've changed the city," Lady Pemberton said one afternoon while they toured the facility. The Whitmore house has inspired 3 other refuges. The property law reform passed Commons. Women are starting to understand they have options beyond endurance. "It's not enough," Claire said. "There are still thousands of women trapped, still systems designed to keep them powerless. It's a start, and starts matter." Lady Pemberton smiled. "You matter, Clara, not because you married a duke, because you refused to stay invisible even when staying invisible would have been easier." The social season that year was different. Clara attended balls on Adrian's arm, and people didn't whisper behind her back. They approached her directly, asked about the refuge, about the Women's Society, about property law reform. Some still looked at her with disdain, some still called her radical, dangerous, inappropriate. Clara found she didn't care. She was having tea one afternoon when Beatrice appeared at the door, looking nervous but determined. "I need your help," the girl said without preamble. "Father has arranged a marriage for me. To Lord Denison. He's 53 and he's horrible, and I don't want to do it, but Father says I don't have a choice." Clara set down her teacup. "How old are you now?" 18, but Father controls everything until I'm 21, and he says if I refuse this marriage, he'll cut me off completely." Beatrice's voice shook. "I don't want to be you. I don't want to spend years being invisible and powerless, but I don't know how to fight him." "Yes, you do." Clara stood. "You fight by refusing to cooperate. You tell him no. You accept being cut off if necessary, and you come to the Whitmore house until you figure out what comes next." "I'd be disowned, penniless." "You'd be free." Clara caught the girl's hands. "I know it's terrifying. I know it feels impossible. But Beatrice, a life of safety with someone you hate will kill you slower than poverty ever could. Trust me. I've seen both." Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "What if I can't do it? What if I'm not as strong as you?" "You are. You just don't know it yet." Clara squeezed her hands. "And you don't have to do it alone. That's what the refuge is for. That's what we're building. So women like you have choices beyond marriage or misery." 3 days later, Beatrice showed up at the Whitmore house with a single trunk and a letter from her father disowning her. Clara helped her settle into a room, connected her with tutors who could help her develop skills for employment, and watched the girl slowly unfold from terrified debutante into someone stronger. "Thank you," Beatrice said one evening while they were going over job prospects, "for not giving up on me, for showing me this was possible." "Thank me by showing the next girl," Clara replied. "That's how this works. We survive. Then we help others survive. Then eventually we change things, so survival isn't the only option." Adrian's proposal came on a cold December evening, exactly 1 year after they'd met. They were in the conservatory, the same conservatory where Clara had found the wounded bird, where Adrian had first seen her choosing compassion over performance. The bird had recovered and been released months ago, but Clara still visited this space when she needed to think. "Do you remember what I said that first night?" Adrian asked, coming to stand beside her. "When I told you I wanted to court you. You said you wanted to show London that you'd chosen me." "I said I wanted them to choke on their champagne." He turned her to face him. I wanted to prove them wrong about you, about us, about everything they assumed. You did. We did. No. Adrian's hands framed her face. You did. I just gave you the space to do it. You're the one who transformed from invisible to unstoppable. You're the one who faced down your brother, survived evaluations, started a refuge, changed laws. I just watched in awe. You did more than watch. I loved you, that's all, and I want to keep loving you for the rest of our lives. He pulled a small box from his pocket. I know we're already married, but I want to ask properly this time. Not in a rush to beat your brother. Not as a strategic move. Just as a man who's found the most remarkable woman in England and wants to spend every day proving she's worth celebrating. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, sapphires and diamonds, elegant and understated. Clara Whitmore Blackwood, Duchess of Northridge, woman who refuses to stay invisible, love of my life. Will you marry me again, properly? In front of everyone who said we wouldn't last? Clara was crying and laughing at the same time. We're already married. So marry me again. Big ceremony. Every society vulture invited. Force them all to watch while I choose you in front of everyone who said you weren't worth choosing. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Is that a yes? Clara kissed him hard, tasting salt and joy. Yes, yes, I'll marry you again, as many times as you want. The wedding was in June, in a church large enough to hold half of London. Clara wore blue, the color Adrian said matched her eyes when she was angry. Her hair was styled simply. Her jewelry was her mother's pearls and the sapphire ring Adrian had given her. She looked in the mirror and saw a woman she barely recognized. Not because she'd changed externally, because she'd changed internally. The invisible woman was gone. In her place was someone visible, powerful, certain of her worth. Lady Pemberton was her matron of honor. Beatrice, now employed as a teacher at a girls' school and engaged to a kind young solicitor she'd met through the refuge, stood beside her. The church was packed. Everyone who'd mocked her, everyone who'd dismissed her, everyone who'd declared she wasn't good enough, they were all there, forced to watch as the Duke of Northridge married the invisible woman for a second time. Thomas didn't come. Neither did Aunt Marjorie or Helen. Clara found she didn't care. Adrian stood at the altar waiting, and when she walked down the aisle, his face transformed into something that made her breath catch. You're beautiful, he whispered when she reached him. I'm terrified. Good. I'd worry if you weren't. He took her hands, ready to scandalize them one more time. Always. The ceremony was traditional except for one part. When they reached the vows, Clara spoke first. I used to think love was about being chosen, she said, her voice carrying through the silent church. About someone looking at you and deciding you were worth their attention. But I was wrong. Love is about choosing yourself first, believing you're worth love before anyone else does. Adrian didn't make me worthy, he just helped me see what was already true. She turned to face the congregation. For anyone here who's been told they're not enough, not pretty enough, not rich enough, not young enough, not whatever enough, hear this. You are enough, exactly as you are, and the only person who needs to believe that is you. Everything else follows from there. She turned back to Adrian. I choose you, not because you saved me, because you saw me. And I choose myself, because I'm worth choosing. The church was silent. Then someone started clapping. Lady Pemberton, tears streaming down her face. Then Beatrice. Then others, until the whole church was applauding like Clara had just delivered a sermon instead of a wedding vow. Adrian was crying too, not even trying to hide it. I love you, he said roughly. Every fierce, stubborn, remarkable part of you. I know. Clara smiled through her own tears. I finally believe it. They sealed the vows with a kiss that felt like a promise and a revolution, all at once. 5 years later, Clara stood in the House of Commons watching Parliament vote on the Married Women's Property Act, the law that would finally, officially, allow women to control their own assets after marriage. The law she'd helped draft, lobbied for, testified about in committee. The vote passed 347 to 121. Adrian found her in the gallery afterward, both of them grinning like fools. You did it, he said. You actually changed the law. We did it, all of us. Clara gestured at the women around her. Lady Pemberton, now in her 70s and still fierce. Beatrice, now 23 and running her own girls' school. Margaret from the Refuge, who'd become a lawyer herself and represented dozens of women in property disputes. 5 years ago, I was invisible, Clara said wonderingly. Now I'm watching Parliament vote on legislation I helped write. How did this happen? You stopped being invisible. Adrian pulled her close. You stood up. You fought. You refused to accept the world they tried to trap you in. And you built something better. Clara looked down at the Commons floor, at the men who'd just voted to limit their own power, and felt something like wings spreading in her chest. She'd flown. Actually flown. From the conservatory where she'd saved a broken bird to the halls of Parliament where she'd helped save thousands of women from the same brokenness. What's next? Adrian asked. Clara thought about the letters still arriving daily, about the refuges springing up across England, about the women who were starting to believe they deserved more than survival. Everything, she said. We change everything. And in the harsh, beautiful world she'd fought so hard to transform, Clara Blackwood, once invisible, now unstoppable, knew that they would. Because the woman no one saw had become the woman everyone had to acknowledge, and she was just getting started.